Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. We are currently embedded in the films of Karyn Kusama, and today we investigate, by any means necessary, her most recent film, 2019's Nicole Kidman vehicle, Destroyer. And I'm telling you, Nick, don't make excuses for what you want. It's weak.
I got to tell you, this is a movie that really makes me feel okay with the life choices I've made. They haven't all been perfect, but approaching the age that I am, which I think Nicole Kidman is playing a little bit older than me in this movie. I have to keep repeating that on the show. I feel a little better about it. I feel like I've done okay for myself.
Well, I would say Nicole Kidman's age is one of the things that is the most up in the air in this movie of all the plot points that are continuously up in the air in this movie. That's something I want to talk about because there is, I noted it in my notes about what age she's playing in the flashbacks versus now and what that all means, right? So I'm going to do a little synopsis of this movie because I don't think many people saw this movie, much like I don't think many people saw some of the other movies we've talked about in this run, but it's a pretty simple log line, I would say. Nicole Kidman plays a cop who had a very intense undercover experience in her early days on the force, and it came to disastrous ends, I would say. And the person responsible, who's a little bit of a psycho, had went underground for 17 years. And now they've reappeared and she's trying to hunt him down and find him because she knows that he's back and she wants to basically sew up her past. While this is going on, we also have a subplot, which is about her and her daughter and their strained relationship and how those two things intersect together at the end, I think is a pretty interesting little inflection point that I didn't expect. So it's a tortured cop movie. It's a movie about someone who drinks too much, who doesn't follow the rules necessarily, and is on a one-person mission to get justice. And I think you brought this up one of the other times, but unlike a lot of these movies, like a Taken or something like that, she's not doing it outside the bounds really of the law. There is a little bit of that, but it's not anything like, it's not a killing rampage, right? That's not what she's on to get to her final target, right? This is much more of a just straight up police movie, a straight up detective movie than I expected it to be, I think, before watching it.
Well, same here. That was my prediction, right? It was a couple episodes ago, maybe it was last episode. And we were talking about what this movie was. And I think I remember seeing just like some promotional images or something like that. And it was the scene where she's holding an automatic rifle and she like foils a bank robbery, essentially. Mm-hmm. Yes. And so I figured this was going to be, I mean, my guess for what this movie was, because I knew nothing about it, just that it was Nicole Kidman playing a little bit older. My guess was it was going to be like a female take on, like you said, a Liam Neeson action picture where a middle-aged / older person just kind of goes ham on some criminals for righteous means or righteous ends. And I guess in some sense it is that, right? Particularly in that scene. But yeah, it is. I mean, I wouldn't call it a procedural exactly, but it does have some of those same beats. It's a detective movie. It's a noir, I guess. It won some noir awards, and I sort of see that. Although lighting wise, it's that sort of brightly lit, almost oppressive California sun kind of noir rather than a shadowy evening kind of noir. But yeah.
I would say more in common with a Michael Mann police movie.
Sometimes it wants to be. Yeah.
Yes.
Particularly that scene I was just talking about.
And again, not speaking on quality necessarily right here, just saying in tone and what it's going for, much more of that cop who's still a cop who it just is really on the edge of despair, the edge of going fully down the wrong direction.
Yeah, I got some Abel Ferreira Bad Lieutenant vibes from this one.
Bad Lieutenant.
The original Bad Lieutenant, not the Nicolas Cage,
Right.
semi-sequel follow-up, whatever that was, Port of Call Noir, which I also love.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like this has a little bit of Bad Lieutenant DNA in it as well.
Definitely. One of those type of movies rather than your Death Wish, Dirty Harry, Taken, fill in the blank, right? Punisher, whatever you want to use as your frame of reference for this kind of movie. Nobody, right? That's the Odenkirk movie, right? All those type of movies. This is not one of those movies. It's much more in line with these kind of dirty police dramas, I would say, than it is one of those movies.
It's exceptionally dirty. It is a very gritty, very ugly to look at movie in a lot of ways. I think much by design.
Yeah. So the idea behind this movie, it's a Phil Hay and Robert Manfredi script. So this is the third time she's worked with them. Obviously Phil Hay, her partner, and Manfredi, his writing partner. And it is another low budget movie, though, a Marvel blockbuster compared to the budget of The Invitation. You know, we're talking, what was it again, Nick? You put it in the notes here. What is it? It was about a $12 million budget.
9 to 12. 8 to 12, yeah. And there was nothing I could find anywhere that said what the actual budget was. It was always that range, which is pretty small, particularly considering you got a major A-list star in it. So,
right.
Yeah.
But 12 times the budget of The Invitation. So much bigger budget than The Invitation.
Well, it doesn't all take place in one house either.
No, but we'll talk about, I think most of the time in this movie, the budget isn't something that you think about, except for I think a couple of scenes where you can definitely tell they were being a little bit more ambitious than they could probably support with the budget that they had. And not even like these embarrassing failures, just these things where you're like, I've seen movies like this that have these things in them. I can tell that you just didn't have the money to do A or B, right? So that is definitely something that we'll get into. Nicole Kidman I watched the one special feature on the Destroyer Blu-ray that I got from the library.
Oh, wow.
And that was, a pretty lengthy making of type of thing. And Kidman she got sent the script, not by Kusama or anything like that. Just the script came to her. She read it and she reached out to her agent and said, look, I know Karyn Kusama. I know she's not thinking of me or actors in my range for this role, but I would really like to sit down with her and possibly talk about me being in this movie. So she connected to it pretty instantly and really
You're talking about Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, yeah.
Was there any speculation as to who Karyn Kusama actually had in mind?
They didn't say. I think it was less about the actor and more about someone like Nicole Kidman is not going to be able to work within the budget that we have for this movie, right? They said, hey, Manfredi said they never really had, when they were writing the movie, they didn't really have anybody in mind for the role. And I don't think, and none of this feature said anything about who they might think of that. That's not really something you hear about, for a movie that came out a couple of years ago that doesn't have a lot of press or talk around it, right? I don't think anybody's really investigating what happened with Destroyer.
No, I mean, I want to say this is maybe the most obscure movie. This one and Only the Brave, maybe.
This is very much in that Only the Brave territory for sure.
It sort of came out. It had a very recognizable star doing a very interesting thing in it. It's not a typical glamorous, glorious Nicole Kidman movie, but she is really kind of pushing the grit pretty hard in this and trying to look terrible through most of it. And the characters constantly tell her how terrible she looks. But
yes,
yeah, it's a movie that, I mean, these things come out. I remember when this came out, I remember just because I didn't know what it was. And I saw the poster and I was like, wow, look at Nicole Kidman in this movie that I know nothing about here. I thought it was, a riff on Taken, like I said, something like that. And yeah, sometimes I wonder who these movies are actually for. This was never meant to be something that was going to make a ton of money. I guess it might have had some life on streaming or something like that. It did get nominated. She got nominated for a Golden Globe. Sometimes I think these movies come out just for the Golden Globes, which are the most ridiculous award ceremony of all of them. They're all kind of ridiculous, but these lesser known movies where there's somebody famous in it. They can do something that they don't usually do. And that automatically almost guarantees you a nomination for a Golden Globe. She didn't win, but she's very good in it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, you know, obviously actors, I think, do movies like this sometimes for the exact reason that you're talking about. Like, this needs to be added to my roster of performances so that you can say, like, well, when I do whatever my next bigger movie is, there will be a Golden Globe nominee, blah, blah, blah. Not that Nicole Kidman needs to do that, obviously. I don't think Nicole Kidman does it for that reason, right? But I do think you pick a role like this because you're thinking, if everything goes right, I could be in the conversation for awards, right? And I think at this point in Nicole Kidman's career, doing something interesting to try to get an award is pretty much the only frontier probably that excites her a ton, right? Because she's done everything. And she's one of those people that when I was watching this, I was struck by the fact that as long as really we've been paying attention to movies, you and I, Nicole Kidman has been a movie star.
Yeah.
Right.
Far and Away, 92 or so.
Right. But Days of Thunder is before Far and Away, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. I think Days of Thunder is 90. Far and Away is 92. That's right. Forgot she was in that.
Right. So we're talking, 6, 7 years old, 8 years old when she breaks out. And so for my entire youth and my entire adult life, she has always been around, has always been a movie star. Right.
Yeah. Well, by the time she does Eyes Wide Shut at the end of the 90s, she's already, it's like, okay, what is the frontier now? Like, work with a legendary director because you've basically done everything else already, even up to that point.
Yeah. She has her Oscar, right, for the Hours. All of this is the career has gone through ups and downs. It's gone through very high profile relationships. It's gone through but everything a career can go through, right? It's gone through dips, but she's been big in movies. She's been big on TV. And now I think we're living in another era where she's pretty much one of the big stars, right? When she's in like 3 things this year, they're all getting attention, and, she will continue to be that. And this movie, I think, is a fascinating entry in her portfolio of performances, I would say. And I really want to talk about her performance because I think it's, probably the most memorable thing about the movie in many ways. But my question to you is just overall, I think last week, I believe, saying maybe we're going to run to a hidden gem with Destroyer, right? We've been 3 out of 4 Kusamas have been, 4 out of 5s. And maybe we've got another one just sitting here waiting for us. How did you feel coming out of the movie?
I liked this movie. It's not perfect. There's definitely some flaws in it. I don't think it's one of Kusama's best. I don't think it's one of the best we've talked about on the show yet, but I found a lot of things in it that I found really interesting. I'm a noir guy. As I've said before, I do love these kind of dark, like hard-edged crime pictures. I really like the performance a lot, obviously. I mean, there were a couple of critics said she's kind of overdoing it. It's one of those capital A acting kind of things. And she is wearing a lot of makeup in a lot of scenes here. It kind of goes back and forth between the past and the present where she's older. And so there's some old age makeup that sometimes looks pretty believable, sometimes not so much. But I thought she's very good in it. And, it's an interesting plot. There's a lot of twists in it that I think are not really twists. I think it gives away a lot of its best material, or really hints at a lot of its best material a little sooner than it maybe should. I kind of like it a little bit more mysterious, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of little corners of it that are very interesting. There's like one scene supporting character performances that I absolutely love. The great Toby Huss comes back for a couple of minutes in this. Bradley Whitford is a ton of fun in this movie. He's in it for
Bradley.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, I'm not going to watch a movie just because Bradley Whitford's in it, but if you like him, or, I think he's pretty fun in this as well. So there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff in it. I do like the way it ends. I do like the little twist at the end that is kind of telegraphed also. I mean, I don't think there's anything super shocking in this. I mean, some of the content is, I guess, a little bit just because it's Nicole Kidman, but I enjoy these kind of hard-edged cop movies and undercover dramas, which this very much is. It's got a little bit of a vibe of, and I know I've mentioned this before, it's my favorite thing in the world. It feels a little bit like the show True Detective, particularly the first few seasons where there was flashback structure where they're going between present and past. The most recent one didn't really do that. A lot of people didn't like it for that. I didn't think that was anything to hate it for, but whatever. So I do kind of like that. It does have some of the same darkness to it that does. So yeah, I'd say overall I liked it. I think it's cards on the table. It's a 3 out of 4 star movie. I think it does a lot really well. It's not going to set the world on fire. I think it's a minor movie in some sense, but worth a watch.
Yeah, I think fascinating to talk about for a couple of reasons. One, as part of Kusama's filmography and part of this whole concept that we've been talking about with her and focusing on with her, where the bites at the apple are slim, right? And don't come that often. Even this, right? We're 4 years after The Invitation shows up at Sundance, right? When this movie comes out. So she's got to wait for Hay and Manfredi to have a script that she can take to distributors, try to get made, right? She's not she's directing a lot of TV at this time. This is the point now, we're in the window of her career where, because of The Invitation, she's directing a ton of TV, high profile TV.
Yeah.
And she's working a lot. So it's not like she's not doing anything for these 4 years, but it's also not like she did The Invitation and it turned into, like we talked about, even Blumhouse calling or somebody calling and being like, we've got a $10 million horror movie. You want to make it? And I mean, maybe that did happen and she said no, but I feel like that's probably not the case, right? We're still not getting, she's not making a movie every 2 years, right? This movie came out in 2019. She hasn't made a movie since this movie came out. So we're still in this pocket of just not getting a lot of work. So I think not a lot of people this movie's coming out and going, it's the next Karyn Kusama movie. Where does it fit in her filmography, right? But we are doing this. And you want to put importance on it because she has so few movies, but it's one of these things where like she got to make this movie with a big movie star and she got to kind of do a different thing that she's done before. And I'm sure for her, that was what she wanted, right? Was to bring that to bear. And whether it's minor or major work, it's tough to judge on this because we've seen her career and how can she really wait until she deems can she really wait until she gets what she deems a major work to jump on it? Because I think a lot of the problems with this movie, and I think it's a good movie. I think 3.5 out of 5 stars, like 7 out of 10. That's what I think we're at here for me. I think a lot of the problems with this movie are script problems. Script falling back when the script is trying to do its own thing, when the script is constructing these, like you said, these almost like 1 act, 2 character dramas in one scene, the movie is really cooking. And also when the movie is really revealing itself to you, like I think that sequence where the movie you kind of get the reveal of what's been actually going on and the little piece of information that you've been given sort of untrustworthy by the movie, right? The movie is being its own unreliable narrator in some ways. I think that whole sequence works really, really well. But then you get stuff like where I do feel like Nicole Kidman, well, she's great in it and she's doing everything she's given and she's supposed to do. And she's probably doing more. She's probably elevating what was on the page for the character. There are just too many times where the character just feels like they took the stock drunk cop with a past off the shelf and put it in the movie. And that stuff to me just doesn't work anymore. It never really has worked for me just to do it so stock, right? That's my main gripe with the movie. And I think visually, I think very nice for what is a limited budget. I love that it is a LA movie, but not a Hollywood movie, right? That it's and it really focuses on the barren, shitty places that exist. A lot of this is the desert. You're right. Yeah. You know, she's very early on, she's driving and you're seeing sort of those windmills and stuff. And it's just like that, like nothing area that if you just drive like a little bit inland and get on that highway that goes all the way up the state. That's not the coast highway. That's like the middle of the state highway. There's just nothing, right? It's just barren nothing for hundreds of miles. And you get that feeling and sense here, right? That this is all happening outside of the nice areas, right?
There's a moment where she just walks through Skid Row where you can really see, there's homeless people and encampments and stuff like that behind her. Yeah, I was thinking a lot, like the comparison I made throughout this movie, this feels a lot like kind of the same sort of thing that Girl Fight was doing, right? Like Karyn Kusama, when she was talking about that movie, her debut, she said, well, I wanted to make a genre picture in a very familiar genre that everyone knows, which is the inspirational sports movie with a female lead in it, right? Yeah. And sort of twist things in that direction. And this, as you said, this feels a lot like that sort of drunk, this alcoholic has-been cop just sort of going through the motions and getting violent with people just because they had enough of this shit kind of thing and probably should be retired, but are still doing it. So it's like she's kind of doing that. And I think the major twist or the major wrinkle to that is, again, it's a female lead character, which we don't often see in those movies. But I feel like Nicole Kidman's character in this, she's not a complete innovation, right? Like I have seen those drunken cops, those drunken has-been cops played by women before, just maybe not an entire movie about one. And that really is, I mean, it's not a big move this is making. It's not a big thing that it's not completely groundbreaking, but it does, because particularly, like you said, the performance is as good as it is, that definitely adds to it. But yeah, I agree. There's some cliched stuff in here. And, there's some stuff that I hate to say it, like Karyn Kusama is not Michael Mann, right? Like there's a couple of heist sequences in this movie. They're not that exciting. They're not that intense. They do the job. They're perfunctory in some sense. They're not terrible. Like they're not choreographed in a way that suggests that Karyn Kusama doesn't know what she's doing. There's just not a lot to really remember in them. There's no sort of imagery, or there's no idea in them that jumps out at you, but they kind of get the job done. But there are some moments that are, like you said, when it is kind of doing it, like the stuff between Nicole Kidman and, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, but Tatiana Maslany.
Yeah.
I really like that. She needs to be, I haven't seen a lot of the stuff she's been in, but I really like her in this movie. And
she's a fantastic actress.
She is. And she's way underused in this. Yeah. I feel like the fact that we don't meet that character till like halfway through the movie, and the stuff that she does, like when she's on screen with Nicole Kidman, they're so great together. I would love to find a way to get more of them. I feel like, a lot of good actors are kind of underused in this. Sebastian Stan maybe being the poster boy for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I totally agree. I will say, while I think it'd be unfair to compare basically any filmmaker's heist scenes to Michael Mann's heist scenes.
No, of course. But like other people have done it in more interesting ways than this movie. Sorry, that's the gold standard. Not everyone can do that. And that's not the kind of filmmaker she is, right? Like, I don't think Michael Mann can do some of the stuff that Karyn Kusama does really well.
No, and also I think, I would say that heist scene, which I think is the moment where you can feel the budget constraints the most, which is she calls the cops and 2 cops show up, right? To an armed bank robbery. And then all the other cop stuff we hear off screen, which I think that when you hear the cop stuff off screen, that's a clever way to get around your budget, right? Is not seeing them. But the fact that you have this scene where Kidman and these two street cops,
they look like it's about their first day on the job. They're very green, both of them.
Break through.
Maybe it is.
Get into this shootout. When the shootout lasts a pretty good amount of time, right? And when she leaves the bank, the cops still haven't arrived. I'm like, there would be cops swarming this bank at this moment. It's because they don't have the budget to have a bunch of cops, right?
There's a couple of bank robberies in this movie. They're not good looking banks at all, right? This is not like, the Dark Knight, the heist that opens up the Dark Knight. Like, that is a really nice looking bank. These are kind of the third or fourth tier,
which I like. I like that about it. And I think it works for the flashback bank robbery. That one I think works because it's not presented as an action scene, right? It's presented as more of a dramatic tension scene than it is presented as an action scene. And
a lot of that is shot as surveillance footage.
Yeah. And I think that works I think that one works really well, but I don't want to fast forward too far to that yet. So the idea is, right, Kidman, let's talk about the Kidman performance a little bit before we break into going a little bit through the story. Because I think because of the way this movie is structured, we kind of have to talk about not go scene by scene, but kind of do an order so we can talk about how the pieces interact with one another. But the Kidman performance, as we've been alluding to, I think is genuinely great, right? I think that, yes, sometimes it's a little bit too much, right? I like when she's taking pills with a beer bottle that's been sitting on her nightstand all night, right? I'm like, okay. But again, that's not her fault. It's just what she's given to do. And sometimes she is a little bit too much. But I think she brings I think if there wasn't the flashback performance, I think the modern day performance would be less impressive, but she's able to give such a contrast between the person that she was and then the person that she has become through those two performances that I think it makes both of them work really well. And what I really like is that near the end of the movie, when we're seeing the kind of end of the undercover story, you kind of learn, right, that she was never that different, right, than she is when we're seeing her now. It's just she had more hope, right, that there was something, that there was more in front of her, and now she's out of that hope. But I find that those two performances, they kind of start to meet in that moment, and I think that's very impressive, right, to be able to track a performance across two timelines and make them feel like they come from the same person, even though at first they seem so radically different. I think that's a very, very impressive thing. There's also, like you said, there's a couple of scenes where she's just one-on-one with another actor. The Bradley Whitford scene, I think, is great because it's just two totally different energies, right, happening at the same time, which I think really works. And I genuinely think that scene, which we can get into more when we really talk, we get to the plot a little bit, that scene with her daughter in that restaurant at the end, when they're telling the story about going camping or whatever, I was floored by the performances from both of them in that scene.
That was terrific. Yeah, absolutely.
And also the writing in that scene. And that's why the movie is frustrating, because the writing in that scene is so good. Using that memory, that whole device of her having this one memory and what does it mean, and extrapolating everything about their relationship out of it, is such dynamic screenwriting that it bothers me even more that so many other places in the movie it takes like the easy way out. And Kidman has said this. Kidman says in this interview, in this making of, she goes, I've seen a lot of these things on screen before many times. I've never seen them with a woman as the lead character doing these things, which is obviously absolutely true. It's become more prevalent on TV, I would say, in the last 5 or 6 years since this movie came out, like your Mayors of Easttown and stuff like that, where you have much more of to the point now where it's getting parodied, you know, on the Agatha All Along Marvel show, right? It's one of the kind of shows they're parodying is, you know, woman detective with a past thing, you know? I mean, the new True Detective as well is that same exact.
Oh yeah, yeah, Jodie Foster's character for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But I truly think Kidman's great in this. Big ups to her for being like, much like we talked about this with Tom Cruise, way back when we were talking about Oblivion, where she's just like, no, I'm the same age as Sebastian Stan. I'm the same age as Tatiana Maslany, right?
and it's mostly believable in that.
Mostly believable.
She is. I want to mention this movie does another thing I like a lot. It's an undercover drama, which I said, again, it's a genre I like a lot. But like in those movies, you're basically watching an actor play a character who's playing a character.
Right. Yeah.
And I always find that very, very interesting, especially in this one, because we don't really see Erin before. I mean, there's very, very little material of her in the past, not pretending to be this like low level criminal that she is impersonating to get closer to this gang. And I always really, really like those performances. Like there is a great scene, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more. It reminds me a little of the scene in Reservoir Dogs where her and Sebastian Stan are like rehearsing their characters, right? They're talking about what details they're going to share and the history of these fictional characters that they're portraying so that they won't blow their cover, so that no one will find out that they're cops. And I really like those scenes. And it's like, these movies kind of also, there's this meta thing that they do where they're a little bit about the process. They're a little bit about acting and how to be believable and how to convince the audience you are who you say you are. And I always really, really enjoy that. And I do, as I said, I think it's pretty interesting. We don't know much about this character. Like we see a picture of her like in a police uniform looking very spiffy and classy and, you know, nothing like we see her when she's undercover, and certainly nothing like we see her when she's in the future or in the present of this movie where she's older and grizzled and just sort of beat up by life a lot. And that's really all we get of who this character was before she took on this assignment, and all of the things that led to her being washed up in the film, in the present day in the film. So I do really like that also. I mean, it's this sort of not a dual role, but it's like we're inceptioning. It's inception acting, where she is an actress playing a character who is playing a character.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the movie kind of kicks off with she's in her car, we assume sleeping off a bender of a night, right? And she wakes up and she comes to this crime scene, and they're like, what the hell are you doing here? Where have you been? Are you drunk? All of this stuff that gives you a sense of like, this person's a screw up, right? We don't know what's going on with her. She finds this person with 3 dots on the back of their neck and money with a dye pack explosion, like from a bank robbery, on it. And these 2 cops are like, can you please get out of here? Like, what are you even doing here? Blah, 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 whatever. And, she says like, well, what if I told you I know who did this? And they're like, yeah, get out of here, you drunk weirdo, or whatever.
It's pretty close to that.
Yeah, exactly what happens. And she sort of limps away. And
we need to talk about the limp later. We'll get to that.
So we cut to the next thing we cut to is her coming back to the station, and in the mail she has one of these bills that were found on the dead body was sent to her. And this kicks her off onto her mission, which is that this person that they wanted this undercover sting operation basically to catch, who went underground after the bank robbery, for some reason we don't know at that point why or how, is back, right? And she wants to find them. And everyone, it's really kind of interesting because everyone is sort of like, again, stop it, you drunk weirdo, like just leave it alone. It's not a big deal, which I found a little bit weird, even after we get the revelation of what's actually happening and going on, because I'm like, this person seems like a pretty bad person. I feel like the police officers would want to catch this criminal that's been in hiding for many, many years, but
15 years,
15 years or 17 years, I think it is what it ends up being. But, she basically is like, okay, these people aren't going to help me. So she goes to 2 people. She goes to like this gun runner person and says, I've got a body with one of your guns, so give me this bag of guns or whatever.
And she just takes it. I love that scene too.
Yeah. Or I'm going to arrest you and you're going to go away, basically. So she gets his
bag of guns. He says, you're fucking up right now. And she just like backs out, like just cool as hell. Like, I don't care. I got your guns. What are you going to do about it?
And leaves. And she also goes to see Toby Huss, who was an FBI agent.
Yeah, he was the one who handled the operation when she went undercover, because her partner, Sebastian Stan's character, Chris, was an FBI agent.
Yeah, and she never was, right? Because that was the thing. Because he has that moment where he goes like, oh, in my opinion, you're one of us, or whatever.
Yeah, she was a sheriff's deputy, they said. She was like local police, and she was working in an FBI operation with an FBI agent.
Yeah, so basically she's like, this bill, can you look up the number on it? I guarantee you it's from that bank robbery. And so basically he looks it up and goes, it is.
And that's the last we see of Toby Huss, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, except for one other flashback. They show him in one other flashback.
Oh, yeah, with hair, which looks ridiculous. Yeah.
Which is a crazy thing.
I just wanted to mention, so Karyn Kusama at this point has directed a few episodes of Halt and Catch Fire, show I liked a lot. So he was on that show, and the star of that show was Scoot McNairy, who's also in this movie in a small role. I like that. It says to me that she had a good relationship with these actors, Toby Huss also being in The Invitation. Mm-hmm. And I just like that always makes me feel good about a director when they work with people and those people want to come back and work with them again. Yeah, whether absolutely. It's a creative thing or just they just liked her as a person or she liked them as people. I always just sort of enjoy those things. And I really like both of those actors a lot. And one of those things that just sort of elevated this movie even more for me was seeing them again. Although I was bummed that he didn't come back more. I'm team Toby Huss. I love that guy.
Whenever I hear Scoot McNairy's name, I think about this tweet that I saw right around the time that Batman v Superman was coming out, because he's in that movie. He plays the guy who like blows up Congress or the spoil something on the Batman v Superman.
I've never seen that, but like him being in it, I'm more inclined to maybe watch it someday.
So he basically, his whole deal is, to take a little aside, his whole deal is when Superman fights Zod and Man of Steel and like destroys Metropolis, he loses his legs basically in that, and his family dies. So he's depressed and he's hell bent on revenge on Superman essentially. And Lex Luthor takes advantage of him. Anyway, this is besides the point of my story, which is that when he was in that movie, someone was said something to the effect of on Twitter of, there's someone named Scoot McNairy in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. He's a great actor, but get a human name, buddy. And every time I say his name, that's what I think.
You know what? If Skeet Ulrich can be Skeet Ulrich, by the way, they should totally do it like podcast about behind the scenes Hollywood stuff. Skeet and Scoot, or Scoot and Skeet. I would love to listen to that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Skeet Ulrich. So he goes see Toby Haas. Basically, was like, "Let me help you," and she's like, "No, I'm going to do this myself." Essentially,
he wants her to go to his Bible study group. He says, "We don't do any snake handling. We don't handle any snakes or anything," which is a great line. And she refuses to go along with him. Yeah,
and what to get a sense of right away, right, is this woman is isolated, right? She doesn't really have any good relationships in her life at all. There is nobody you see her talk to in this entire movie except her ex-husband, who is still kind to her, and still you can tell
Scoot McNairy. Yeah, Scoot
McNairy, very good performance, where you can tell that he wants to be able to still connect with her, right? He wants there to be something salvageable, not necessarily about them being romantic together, but just that he knows how lost she is. He knows how destructive she is, right? He wants to try to pull her back from it, and he just can't.
There's a little bit of sarcasm in that role, and that the way he's written too, that I like a lot. Always good to see Aaron.
Yeah.
He is a terrific actor. We need more Scoot in movies.
We need more Scoot. Need more Scoot McNairy and things. So
were they married? I mean, that's another thing. There's a few ambiguous things, and I understand why the movie's doing it, but like we don't really get a lot of sense of what their relationship was. But her daughter, who's 16 now, he has custody of her, even though she's kind of out running around raising hell without him knowing about it. And Aaron runs into her in places, or gets a call like, "Hey, your daughter's at a bar underage." Yeah. And so she arrives there and just kind of raises hell. But yeah, like their history and their past is left a little bit ambiguous.
I mean, my assumption would be that they were married, because I don't think, like, in a lot of instances, I don't think a court would allow a boyfriend to have custody of a child.
Right. But we don't know. I mean, at least I assumed for a while that he might be the daughter's father.
Well, yeah, I guess
biological father. And
obviously that is the thing that they're playing at for most of the movie. Right. Yeah. But knowing what you know at the end of the movie, which is that Sebastian Stan is the father, that you have to imagine they wouldn't just give custody of a child to a boyfriend.
Well, again, it's a reveal that's not a reveal, right? Like in that scene I was talking about before, where they're sort of learning each other's invented past as undercover cops. You can tell that there's going to be some sexual tension there. There's a moment where he's like, "Kiss me." So if we do that in public, it won't look weird. It won't look like we're doing it for the first time. And they're both pretty into it. And I think it's very, very clearly telegraphed that something is going to happen between them. So the reveal later of who the actual father is not really that much of a reveal. It didn't shock me at all. I'm sure you saw it coming too.
That reveal didn't shock me at all.
Okay. I'd be surprised if anybody was like, "Whoa, really?" I
headphones by accident. Hold on a second. I unplugged my headphones, so I'm all of a sudden I was in an abyss of silence. I don't know what was going on.
Well, I didn't say anything interesting, so sorry.
I was going to say that whole thing about them being into it when they're doing their fake kiss reminds me of this story that just came out while we're recording this. It's obviously going to be months from now when this episode airs, but that there's a story in that movie, We Live in Time, the new Andrew Garfield,
Florence Pugh. Yeah.
There was this story that they were in their love scene and they didn't hear the director say cut. So they just kept fake going at it. And the cameraman got so uncomfortable that he like turned around and walked into the corner of the room and didn't look at them because he didn't know what to do.
We didn't hear the director yell cut. Yeah, sure. Sure you didn't. Sure you didn't, Spider-Man.
Just one Spider-Man.
Do I blame him? No. Would I have played it that way? Probably not.
I love both those people such a tremendous amount as screen presences that I'm very excited to watch that.
Andrew Garfield's in one of my favorite movies, which is Under the Silver Lake. So yeah, he's great.
Mm-hmm. All right. So where do we leave off? We left off. Oh, she goes to see Toby Huss. She leaves there. And then what does she do after she goes to see Toby Huss? She goes to see
she tracks down a member of the gang,
James Jordan. Played by James Jordan. Toby.
Toby is his name. So he was arrested and did do time in jail.
Yeah.
And
so we should say there's like this gang of people. It's Toby Kebbell plays the Silas, who is like the main ringleader. Sebastian Stan and Nicole Kidman's characters are undercover new members of the gang. Tatiana Maslany is part of this gang. Her character, James Jordan's character, is part of this gang. And then I don't know the actor's name who played
Arturo. Yeah, she sees him a bit later.
Yeah. And I don't think it's on the cast list that you put in the top.
Did I forget Arturo?
You forgot Arturo.
No, I'm sorry. He's pretty good in this, whoever he is.
He is. But anyway, he goes to see James Jordan. This is the first scene. This is the first, okay, we're going through the people. And this is where I will say, this is the first time I'm like, oh, this isn't the movie that I expected it to be, right? She doesn't come in and like threaten to kill him. She doesn't torture him. In fact, she does kind of the
opposite. You said a lot without saying a lot there. Yeah. It's an interesting scene. So I ended up watching this movie. I was just saying before we started recording, I watched about the first 40 minutes or so, and then I knew we were going to postpone talking about it. So I decided to just start over closer to when we're recording the show. And it was a little bit after this where I gave up the first time. Not gave up, but I just, I was going to watch the rest of it later on, and then I didn't. And I will say this is where the movie kind of turned me off a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
This was, a little bit more than it needed to be. It was Bad Lieutenant in a way that I didn't really want it to be Bad Lieutenant. And yeah, it just skeeved me out.
Yeah. It just feels again, like one of those things that is, what's the most, you'll do anything you possibly can, no matter what. You don't care about yourself. You have no self-respect. You have nothing left except this mission. You're so broken that you'll give this dying criminal a hand job for him to give you a little bit of information about something.
Very graphically. Very
graphically.
This movie does not shy away. It's oddly demure in other scenes. And this one, it's like, nope, we are going to show you the entire thing.
Yeah. James Jordan is a Taylor Sheridan favorite. I should say that. He's in Wind River. He's in Yellowstone. He's in Lioness. He's in Mayor of Kingstown. Like he is in, if Taylor Sheridan is making it, he's going to be in it.
Good for him. Yeah. That's a pretty good gig. Pretty good guy to know. I love Wind River.
Yeah. I know him primarily from he was in the third season of Veronica Mars. He played a character named Tim Foyle, who was the TA for like the criminology professor's class that Veronica was taking. And he hated her because she was so good at solving crimes. And he loved the professor so much. He wanted the professor to love him, and the professor just thought he was like a sniveling shit or whatever. So that's the thing I mostly think of him from when I see him.
I actually like his performance in this, though. Yeah. Like, this is an interesting character because he is this kind of goofy. I mean, he's a criminal in the past, but he's young and good looking and, just kind of up for anything. And we see him. Yeah, he's been compassionately released from jail. He says he's got a couple months to live at best. He's just like lying in a bed. He looks terrible. Mm-hmm. And then Nicole Kidman walks in, and the first thing he says is, "You look old," which is really funny. There's a couple great lines here where, she said, "Oh, like they released me because I was just too damn healthy," or something like that. It's got a couple of moments in it. The script it can be very clever. It can be very witty, and I like those moments. But there's times when it's a little clunky. It kind of clunks along as well.
I like the stuff with the owls, like him telling to turn the owls
that was
around.
Nice too.
Like those are little details I think are interesting.
But it's also a very morbid, very dark sort of scene. I mean, it really does show that this movie is not going to shy away from stuff like that, right? Like this guy is dying. She knows it. She kind of razzes him about it, like in a way that it's not like friendly, playful banter. She walks out of the scene and she says, "Have a good month."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which I love. Like, as much as I dislike the scene, no. He says, "I've got like a couple of months to live." And she says, "Have a nice month," and just like books out of there. Love that.
I think, like you said, though, I think, again, this scene has good parts to it and also has those things that it's just a little bit too much. and you're gonna understand how fucking gritty and real this is gonna be.
Do we need to see her wiping her hands off for as long as we do? I think not.
Yeah.
I'm not a prude. I'm a tough guy to offend, but that was like, okay, movie. I get it.
Yeah. Not offended by it. Just like, I don't need this.
No. Right.
That's the thing. So again, that part of that scene, I was like, okay, like maybe not I hate this, but this movie's going to be just whatever.
Like shock for shock's sake, which
exactly.
it doesn't need to be. I mean, when Abel Ferrara does that, I feel like there's a little bit more of a reason for it, a little bit more of a necessity for it. This movie, I don't think we need to go quite to the length that this does.
These are the times where it feels like, that Rashida Jones cop parody, Angie Tribeca.
Yeah,
this is when it feels like that, right? Where it's like, I don't care. I'll do anything to catch the criminal. It's got like that vibe to
it. Well, Rashida Jones never did that on that show.
But you know what I mean?
At least not in an episode that I saw.
But but that was like the joke of the show. That was the overall joke of the show was, I'm really dark, this whole kind of deal. And like, this is what this is. So,
well, I mean, she degrades herself through the entire movie, this character. Yes. And so like, yes, this is all part of that. But like when she spills a couple scenes later, she's in a bar, just kind of, it's a nothing scene. She has a beer in front of her and she just knocks it over because she's hammered and is apologizing. But like, there's a lot of that in this. And I think, it's all of a piece. It's more, and this movie doesn't like, I think the first time I saw this scene, I was like, okay, so this is what we're going to be doing for the next hour and 20 minutes or so. I was not into that. And it turns out to not really be like, that's about as far as things go. And later when she does stuff that's questionable or violent or whatever, it just seems a little bit more, just sort of works better for the tone of the movie.
And Nick, I would say, I think be careful if you're knocking the table or whatever that you're sitting near, because I'm hearing like something on the mic.
This might actually be this chair. So I'm going to I can't do it now, but I will switch this out before we record again.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the next scene is she goes, I don't know if the first daughter scene's in between these two scenes or we have the Arturo scene next. Whatever order they come in, we have the scene with the daughter at the bar. She basically gets called to go to this bar, like you're saying, after the scene. And this is again one of those scenes where I'm like, okay, like I didn't even need this scene to know that this was what the relationship you were going for with the daughter in this movie. There
is a great moment in I agree. I mean, it's totally obvious. We know exactly what this is. It's a little over the top, but her daughter is just making out with this guy. She's 16 and she's like trying to tell everybody in the bar, like she's underage, she's 16, whatever. And the guy starts to say, well, the age of consent is, and then she just slaps him before he can finish the statement. That's a fun little moment there. But it's I think it again makes its point a little more bluntly than it needs to.
Yes. I mean, and this guy is like the biggest, like he's played by Bo Knapp.
Jay,
just like the biggest shitheel you could possibly ever imagine.
So much hair gel, this guy.
So much hair gel. The way he talks, I think she'd be more comfortable if I was here. He's got all that going on.
Yeah, you don't want your daughter dating that guy.
No, just born in a lab to be the slimiest motherfucker you could possibly ever imagine, right?
Yeah.
And once again, it's just one of those things with the movie where it's like you just took a stock character and put him in the movie, right? Even the daughter throughout this movie until that last scene, it's the same thing. She's just angry teen who is just like, shut the fuck up, mom. Like
just rebelling just to rebel.
Exactly. That's all you get from it, right? That's the only thing you get from it. And if the last scene hadn't occurred between the two of them, it would have been a wasted plot line to me. The last scene, I think, saves it because of how good it is. But this dynamic, we revisit like 2 or 3 more times throughout the movie.
Yeah, she goes to the hospital at one point. She gets in a fight and like wrecks her hand, and Nicole Kidman comes in and just gives her shit about it.
Yeah.
And she's where have you been, mom?
Yeah, but I do like the line when she's leaving, she goes, nobody's fucking accountable, or whatever, when she leaves.
Yeah, and then she sees Jay like just at a walkway in the hospital. They have this look that's kind of nice there too. I would have liked a little more of that. Give me that stuff rather than do it all in dialogue.
I just wish it had, I wish, because they save the not reveal till the end, that it just feels like this satellite story that isn't connected to the rest of the movie until we find out actually kind of what's actually going on, right? And that's the reason why I think it also doesn't work because you're like, well, why are we doing this? I already know her life is a piece of shit. I don't need to keep seeing it over and over and over again. I got it, right? Just from her way she acts on the job, I can tell that things are not good, right? She's taking pills with like a stale beer. Just like I said before, I get it. I got all of these signals you're giving me that she has issues, right?
Well, there's this great bit that this film does. It's like a recurring gag almost for at least about the first half of it, maybe more than that, where she keeps getting calls from her partner. Like she's a cop. Like she is still working. She's not retired. She's not suspended. Usually in a movie like this, the cop is suspended and is kind of going off, being a loose cannon, right? Doing their own thing. And she's not. She's still employed by the police department, and she has a partner, this guy, Antonio. And she gets like voicemails from him and never calls him back. And we meet Antonio, but it's not until like 2/3 of the way through the movie. Yeah. Like that is one of the great reveals, one of the great mysteries of this movie. Not because he's like surprising looking. He's just a dude. He looks like a cop. But like, we're always kind of wondering, who is this Antonio guy, right? And finally, we actually do get to see him. But yeah, it's for like 5 seconds, like 2/3 of the way through the movie. Yeah. So you can kind of tell that she is not, she's not playing by the rules. She's not doing things by the book, as movie cops often don't.
They don't do things by the book. But so then she goes to see Arturo, who is, I looked up his name. Let me get it up right now. Zach Villa is the actor. He was in Vengeance, that BJ Novak podcaster movie.
Is it bad that I want to see that just because he's a podcaster?
He's been in American Horror Story. He does some video game voices. It looks like he was in Cyberpunk 2077, and he does a lot of little stuff. It looks like, TV, video games is mostly what he does. He's in The Expanse.
He's one of those character actors that looks like a lot of other character actors. Like he looks like he's been in stuff that he hasn't been in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get the scene. He was part of the gang, and now he is giving immigration advice to illegal immigrants.
Legal advice to immigrants. Yeah.
Yeah. Legal advice to immigrants.
There's a little foot chase here.
Yeah. He's also on the run, basically. There's a warrant out for him from all this time before. And she shows up, and we get a foot chase. And I liked the foot chase.
I did too. And it doesn't end in any sort of spectacular way. No. He just like gets out of breath in the woods and it's like, all right, fine, whatever, I'll talk to you. And that scene ends in a really nice way also. Like she gets the information she needs to get out of him. He leads her to the lawyer, which is Bradley Whitford's character, which we'll talk about in just a second. And, she basically asks him, like, so is this what you're doing to atone for what we did, essentially, the bank robbery thing? And he says, yeah, when are you going to be done? Like, there's this moment about that. And he's like, what does he say? He says something like, as well as I do, right? Like,
it doesn't really work like that.
There's no atoning for it. Yeah. So I'm going to just do this until I die. I'm going to just do this forever. And, it will never be like the karma is never going to shift back in that direction. Like there are some kind of interesting ideas like that are peppered throughout this movie. And I like that a lot. Because we find out it was a pretty nasty business what they were involved in. And her hands are not clean either, which I guess we sort of know that, right? Like,
right, but we don't know quite yet. So I think that was actually, pretty well built out, where it's like, are they just, because they say a lot of things to her, but you're like, are they just criminals who are mad that someone lied to them this whole time? What's the actual deal? They're just trying to make themselves feel better by saying she's the same as them, because you don't really know.
And they all went to jail and she did.
Right. Well, actually, none of them went to jail, right? Except for James Jordan, right?
Oh,
none
sorry.
of them went to jail.
I thought Arturo did.
No, I don't think so, because he's running. He's still running, right? Like he's on the lam.
Is he?
Yes, because
I think I missed that then. Yeah,
because she goes, "I'm not here for you. I don't care about anything, that you're doing."
But I thought that just meant, and again, that's just my stupidity. I thought that just meant because he still had connections to the gang and still talked to the lawyer.
Well, no, because later on, I forgot who it is. It wasn't Toby Kebbell's character. Oh no, it was Bradley Whitford's character. He goes, "There's a warrant out for his arrest. Did you bring him in? Like, where's your partner? It seems like you're running a little bit outside the lines right here," or whatever he says to her when he visits her. So my assumption was he didn't go to jail, that he has been on the run this whole time. Because the only reason that James Jordan's character went to jail is because he was in the car with her.
Right. Well, she basically injured him so that he would get arrested.
Yeah. So that's the only reason why he went to jail, because Tatiana Maslany didn't go to jail. Obviously the Toby Kebbell character, Silas, didn't go to jail. So I'm assuming that whole car got away. And that's what's been going on. So it's a good scene between the two of them. And
I love they're standing on a hill overlooking Dodger Stadium, and you can hear the baseball game far in the distance, and all the cars in the parking lot. They're just sort of overlooking this almost like heavenly, this sort of beatific looking thing, and it's just Dodger Stadium and the giant parking lot outside Dodger Stadium. That's a great visual moment in this movie.
It was a great visual moment, and I like that whole sort of day, I guess, is framed by the Dodger game on the radio.
Yes.
And I think now looking back, it's supposed to be a clue to you about what day it actually is. You know, I have to go back and watch the movie and see if there's like something on the radio or something at the very beginning of the movie, you know, is giving the final score of that game or something, you know what I mean? But I like that it's kind of all framed around that. And then that leads her to Bradley Whitford's character. And this was really liked the scene between her, you know, and Arturo.
Chinatown vibes, this Bradley Whitford scene. This
before we do that though, we have to talk about the flashback scene. Because again, this is one of those things where the Arturo scene doesn't totally bring you back in, because you've got the James Jordan scene, and then we've got this flashback scene where we've got Toby Kebbell wearing just a ridiculous wig.
That wig is terrible.
It's a terrible wig.
Yeah, like to the point where I was like, is this supposed to be funny?
Yeah. Toby Kebbell, a really interesting actor when he's given interesting stuff to do. Here, he's just got a little bit of I'm crazy guy thing going on. And there's not as much time with him as I thought we were going to get, to be honest with you. I thought we were going to get like a real scene between the two of them.
The way she talks up his character, right? Like he is not a criminal mastermind exactly, but like a real psychopath, like a real dangerous mofo. Again, I was thinking about True Detective, about Reggie Ledoux in the first season, this guy that they kind of talk about for a bunch of episodes, and then they reveal this character, and it's like, holy shit, that guy's terrifying. I kind of thought there would be something with Silas like that, and there really isn't. He's first of all, terrible name for a criminal, you know, leader of a bank robbing gang. Not great. But also, the character is, there's one moment like where he basically talks Arturo into playing Russian roulette, and there's 3 bullets in the gun rather than the usual one. I don't know the rules. I don't play, but you know, I think you're only supposed to have the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Only supposed to have one. I like that. I like the way that scene plays out, because I like that his reaction is kind of like, man, you got to stop letting people push you around. I like that that's not what he says to him.
And then there's like some more of this, go fuck that hero.
Yeah.
Like that's what you get. That's your reward for surviving with 50-50 odds.
But I think Stan is actually very good in that scene, the way he plays it, because you think, right, because of the kind of looks that him and Kidman are giving each other, that they're going to react in a over the top, like, what the hell are you doing kind of way. But the way Stan plays it off, like you said, the acting within the acting, I really like, where he does the thing where he's like, there are 3 bullets in this gun. And he said it very like offhandedly, and then he pours them out. Yeah. And sort of like he's in on the joke, right? He's sort of like, I'm right with you, man, or whatever. I like that. But I did not like just I'm just a crazy nut, and I just like to let my people try to kill themselves just for fun. You know, again, it's over the top. It's not interesting to me. It's a stock thing. The wig doesn't help at all. And then
no, well, I just expected more. Again, I probably because of True Detective, right? So we're introduced to that milieu of characters. They live in a trailer park, and they're just kind of like doing drugs and drinking all day. And so, you know, you thought it was going to be a darker and crazier thing than it was. And it just seems like a bunch of like, you know, college kids or something like that, playing video games and drinking beers. And, we're going to rob a bank now.
Yeah. Silas did not seem...
He's not scary.
Dangerous enough. Exactly. Crazy enough.
No, not at all.
Like, he's obviously is more dangerous than the rest of them because of what happens at the end. And he obviously he has the potential to be crazier. But you don't get the sense, right, that he has this ability to like work from the shadows and control people and get people killed when he wants to. You don't get that sense at all. The movie, she sort of tries, the Aaron Bell character sort of tries to give that off in the script, right? That's the thing with Silas, right? He's so dangerous. He needs to be taken out. And maybe that's why everyone else is sort of like, why are you so into this? He's just like, yeah, if we can find him, great. But like, we're not going to go on a manhunt for him. You know, this is just a guy who robbed one bank
One bank. I mean, they did say, what's it, $7 to $10 million, which is a lot of money. But for a bank robbery movie like this, usually we're talking about a lot more money than that, right?
But the one thing I would say,
pretty low rent in a lot of ways.
One thing I would say is I do feel like they go after him because he did kill a law enforcement officer, you know?
Yeah.
So you would think they would go after him. But again, so we get this flashback scene. And so when we get to the Bradley Whitford scene, I'm like, okay, this movie sort of had like 2 scenes I kind of liked and 2 scenes I really didn't. And the two scenes I really didn't, or 3 scenes I really didn't, have sort of stacked up on themselves with one break in the middle, which is the Arturo scene, which I liked. So when he gets to Bradley Whitford, I'm like, I still don't know how I'm going to feel about this movie. This Bradley Whitford scene goes a long way to turning the movie around for me in many ways. Good,
right. And I checked out before this the first time. So yeah, I was not prepared for how good this was going to be. He is hilarious. He's so much fun in this movie.
He's so much fun. And
it's this moment, and this movie is not fun, right? No. Like I'm saying that like his character is heightened and is comedic, but like this is a pretty bleak movie, and I give it a lot of credit for that. I really like that about it. I don't like a movie that's, you know, being trivial about the kinds of things that we're talking about in this movie or dealing with in this movie. And this scene is the one that kind of takes it in a somewhat darkly comedic direction, but it's so well done, and it fits, even though it's a little incongruous tonally with the rest of the movie. It really works here, and I think it comes around, like you're saying, like exactly when we need it.
Like, he is this really rich lawyer who is removed from the everyday violence and destruction that probably the people he represents and helps rot right on.
But it's still the biggest sleazebag maybe of everyone in the movie.
But that allows him to be a little more free because he feels untouchable. He feels like, I have a good life. So
great house. Yeah.
Great house.
Yeah,
beautiful house. She's walking up to that house. I'm like, oh my God. Like this, one of those things I wrote down was, it just works well. You can get around a lot of budget stuff just by going like, let's find a cool ass place to put this camera and shoot something that really exists. And this is one of those things. So she shows up here.
This is the second Karyn Kusama movie where the real estate is, I guess they do that in a lot of movies, right? I'm always impressed by architecture and just like nice locations and things like that. And this is another one, much like the Invitation House. I'm like, holy shit, I want to live there.
Yeah, the beautiful house. Again, it's the energies. It's such a good job of having, her energy is so bottled up and low and simmering and angry. And to have someone who's the exact opposite playing off of her.
Well, and
really
he's very
works.
Cordial to her at first. He's like, I'm having iced tea. You want iced tea? Like he's very chill, very conversational. And I really like the way this scene turns. Like we do see what of a son of a bitch he is very quickly. And he is not afraid to really threaten her in this scene. And you know, she'll do that to almost anybody in this movie, whether they're rich and powerful or they're just some shitbag like Jay. But yeah, they kind of play off each other in a really interesting way. But there's some modulation there, right? Like he will have a civilized conversation with her until she just doesn't allow him to do that.
Yeah. And I like that, you know, he sets the parameters a little bit too for what the actual reality of the movie is and her quest is, right? Which is, you don't have a leg to stand on right here. Like you obviously have a shitty life. like you made a ton of bad choices and now you're trying to make up for it in this, like, you know, sort of lone cowboy way. And how do you think it's going to work out for you? It's not going to work out for you at all, is basically his vibe to it. Right. And Bradley Whitford is obviously so good at playing exactly this guy, whether the edge is, I'm kind of a good guy or I'm kind of a bad guy. He just hits the sweet spot of charming, but swarmy, you know,
smarmy. Yeah. 100% smarmy. 100%. Yeah.
And he's great at fast talking. He's great at coming off like he's the smartest person or thinks he's the smartest person in the room. And I don't know if it was in the script or he brought it to it, but throwing in the little thing where he keeps yelling at his son for the way he's hitting the baseball.
Great. Yeah. They've got a batting cage in the backyard. Yeah. His son is practicing and he's just like right in the middle of this sort of heated exchange with Nicole Kidman. He's like just yelling at his son.
Yeah.
So funny.
And, you know, finally she's like, he's being a real shit. So she goes to like grab him by the back of the head. And then this like security guard he has basically like beats the shit out of her, right? And she like vomits on the floor and he like, I love the guy's like, this is disgusting, like throws her in the bathroom. Like he doesn't just like get the fuck out of the house. He's like, I don't want to deal with this. Like I am
I have to admit, I really like the way the scene played out, because I thought at first, you see this in movies sometimes, right? Like she fakes being sick, like she makes herself throw up so that she could like get the drop on these guys.
Yeah.
But I feel like in this movie, no, she actually is just puking.
Yeah. No.
It's like she was punched and she's sick, and so she's going to throw up on the floor. She ends up doing that later in the scene, but it doesn't come till later. Like that idea doesn't occur to her, right? Because these characters are always like that, right? Like, oh, I got a plan. I'm just going to pretend to be sick. I'll fake throwing up, I'll stick my finger down my throat or something. I think she's really throwing up here. And I think that's it. It's gross, but it's a nice character moment. And then when she's in the bathroom, he locks her in the bathroom so she can clean up or whatever. And then she decides, nah, fuck this. And she picks up like a soap dish and like just brains the guy with it. Really, really great moment. Not as great when her and Tatiana Maslany beat the shit out of each other later, but we'll get to that.
Coffee shop.
Talk about girl fight. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I thought it was a Cold Stone Creamery.
I think it was a coffee shop, but I could be wrong.
Either way, it's a great scene.
One of the things I really like about this is it's not like we talked about John Wick or Taken or one of those things where they have an exact plan, or they're so good at hand-to-hand combat, or they're so good at whatever that
she shoots her shot. She figures out what she can do, and she goes for it.
It reminds me of, have you seen Ready or Not, the horror movie?
Forever ago, but yeah, I saw it when it came out.
It was Samara Weaving. Mm-hmm. The thing I love about that movie is that they're playing off all these movies where, the person is going to get the victim turns it around and turns into a badass who like kills everybody. Right. And the movie keeps playing at that, but every time it happens, she gets more and more beat the shit out of, right? She just keeps like escaping almost by luck, until the point where everything goes right for her. And this is kind of what this felt like, the serious version of that, right?
Well, it is. And it's definitely a long running trope, right? Like the private investigator, this character, this lone wolf sort of detective character, they get the shit beat out of them constantly. Even Humphrey Bogart was always getting just knocked out, sapped in the back of the head by somebody. And this feels a lot like that. Like this movie, it's not playing on the noir tradition in the same way something like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang or The Long Goodbye, some of my favorite movies kind of do. They're very, very, like they only exist to sort of parody that genre, but this one's kind of doing that as well. They're always these hard drinking characters who can take a punch, and that's part of their charm, and that's part of what makes them tough and gritty, is that they don't win every fight. They're not John Wick, and they sometimes just get pounded by some random security guy at a lawyer's house.
I mean, the title is very apt. She's just a destroyer, right? She's just, that's her only...
a self-destroyer and a destroyer of everything else, yeah.
That's her only...
It's a great title, by the way.
Skill
love that title.
Is that she is able to tear things down, whether it's herself or these operations, just because she's just not going to give up, right? She's just going to keep going either... And like she can think on her feet, obviously use that sickness against her. She brains that guy, and then she just fucking...
I love this scene.
Hits Bradley Whitford in the face. And I love that the son is like going to call or whatever. And she's like, no. Don't call anybody. And then the scene where, she basically gets him to tell her what's going on. And she is like, is he a piece of shit like you? And he says, no, he's a good kid.
Oh, I love that line. I really love that character detail, that little moment, right? No, he's a good kid.
Yeah.
Like that motherfucker is a judge of character.
Yeah, exactly. And so this like leads, right? This is going to lead her to Tatiana Maslany now. Like that's where we're going. And we get this flashback of Tatiana Maslany in this part, like she's like in the back of a truck or whatever. And this,
I love that shot. Yeah, I thought we'd see a little bit more of that. They're like on the way to, I guess, commit the robbery, like before they suit up for it and everything.
Yeah, or do something, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's just these two young women with guns in the back of a truck. Like, we're going to go rob a bank.
And I like those are the things where that some of those, when they would mention a character and then show the flashback of the character just silent with like a couple of shots, that felt very Invitation, like the way it was framed and sort of the way the soundtrack would work, stuff like that. There was one flashback where we heard the Godsmack song when it goes, I'm not the one who's so far away.
What is the name of that song? I was like, that really brought me back. That song
really brought me back, like big time.
Inescapable for a long time, like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Is Godsmack?
Snakebite? Yeah, it's definitely Godsmack.
It's Godsmack So Far Away, I think is the name of the song.
Okay.
Voodoo. No, it's called Voodoo.
Voodoo. There you go.
Yeah, I had this album for sure. I saw this cover with the girl with the triple piercing in her lip ring.
I did not, but I was really into Buck Cherry at the time. So fair enough. Same thing.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Brian, our mutual friend Brian, always says this joke about how one album all their songs were like "Get Away," and then the next album they were like "You're so far away." He's like, make a decision. But any horror movie of this era had a Godsmack song in it.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Every single horror movie
They were like,
think of
just edgy enough to be in a movie,
Yes.
but like not edgy enough to be edgy for real.
they were definitely on like the Blair Witch 2 soundtrack, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Boy, that's a movie I'd love to talk about someday. I don't know in what context. But
One of our Halloween specials we can definitely do.
Maybe.
We can definitely do
Yeah.
the Blair Witch sequel. What a movie. Oh my God. What a fucking movie that is. So we get this scene and now we go, our next scene is like, when we get into, we're about an hour into the movie now, about halfway through the movie. I think right now around here is where we get the daughter scene with the broken wrist. So it's like another one of these scenes. And then we're into the Tatiana Maslany thing. And she kind of is tracking her, right? Watching her. And what happens is she ends up meeting up with, you never see his face at this point, right? But meeting up with Silas to rob a bank because Silas is out of money, right? Silas is out of his money. He's got to come back and he's got to get more money, right? So they're going to do a bank robbery. And she sees it happening.
Know that, right? Like
She doesn't know it until she
following this character around, and then just kind of happens across, which is pretty good, pretty serendipitous for this character. But and all of a sudden, like Tatiana Maslany's character is meeting up with this gang, and they are again pulling the hoods over their heads, and they're going to this bank. And so she just happens, Erin happens to have this bag of guns in the back of her car, and she's like, all right, I'll call it in, but I'm going first. And she just like walks out into a street in the middle of Los Angeles with this huge axe assault rifle.
Yeah.
I love, there's a couple moments. It's in this scene. She does it a little bit, I think later with something else too, where she just kind of like, there's random people around and she just kind of pulls her badge out. Like, no, don't worry. I'm a cop. Trust me.
Trust me. Yeah.
And like, I think she knows it just as much as everybody else. Like, she is like grizzled and scary enough looking where it's like, they're not going to question this, but like, do they really think I'm a cop?
Yeah. There's this moment right at the performance over there, like, which is a subtle moment, which is she follows her there. She sees what's actually happening, right? They have like these assault rifles. They have much cooler masks than they had in the flashback one, like these like dog masks or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, shit. And she has this moment where you can see on her face, she's like, I didn't want to have to call anybody into this because I want Silas to myself, right? I do not want him getting arrested and then there to be a whole thing. Like, I just want Silas dead. And this is really throwing a wrench into that. But I'm still not so far gone that I can't not call it in, right? I have to call it in because
there's a really nice tension in the scene because of that. And actually we get kind of a similar thing in the other heist, the flashback that we see later in the film, the one that got her partner killed and all of that stuff, where it's like, it's these decisions you have to make in that moment where, your job is to be a cop, right? To serve and protect. But also you've got this kind of personal thing going on the side. And how far will you go to preserve your thing as opposed to, just not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is foiling the robbery. She fires off a lot of shots in this scene. She doesn't really hit anybody. And I think maybe that's partially by design.
Yeah, I think so. I think so as well. She does look very cool when that one shot where she's like, this is a fucking gunfight. And then she opens the door and goes in, because those guys are like,
with those two like first day cops. Yeah. They remind me so much of like video game characters, like in a GTA game or something like that.
Well, I'll say this too. One of these things though, the dude cop has no riz at all. He really feels like he's got nothing. The girl, the female cop, she's a stunt woman like that. That's her main trade. She's a stunt woman, but she's been in a couple of things. She was in a couple episodes of New Girl. Like, she's been on screen before acting. So I think she feels like a little bit more like she belongs. But this is the point where, like, I agree with you. This scene is not like dynamically put together. And there's moments where I think there's just stuff where it's like, we can't show people getting shot. We can't really, because we just don't have like, we got like 3 hours to shoot this thing or whatever, and we gotta get the shots and go. So
it reminds me, just speaking of the video game analogy I was just making, it kind of feels a little bit like that. You duck for cover. It's like a Gears of War thing. And she kind of pops out and fires off a couple shots and then somebody runs to the next, cover. It's pretty, like I said, I use the word perfunctory before. I would, it's all shot at eye level. It's all kind of shot on the ground. There's nothing really interesting looking about it. Although it is, I mean, it's subjectivity wise. I mean, it does, like, you know, Nicole Kidman's character in this movie is not a super badass cop, right?
No.
Like, this is not Heat. So yeah, like, she wouldn't just be hitting everyone. She wouldn't be really foiling this robbery. She's just a, you know, pretty ordinary person doing the best she can in this situation and using what little training she has. So I like that about it. I mean, it's kind of low key. It's kind of, you know, not spectacular, not too explosive, but, you know, this is also a movie. It's also a crime drama. So give me something here, right?
Yeah. I do like, perspective wise, I will say that if you're really using the idea of like, we're just going to shoot it from our main character's perspective, the one thing I do like about it is that is the opposite of usually what I'd say about an action scene, which is the geography is a little bit unclear and you're not really sure where the kind of opponents are or the other side is and what the state of play is in the gunfight. But I kind of think that's because she's trying to do it from Kidman's perspective, you know, to say like, she doesn't know, right?
Yeah,
she is one
the disorientation.
person.
That's kind of what I was saying, right?
Yeah,
that works for the scene.
Yeah, it works for the scene. Again, I don't think it leads to, like you said, a very dynamic or fun or interesting shootout scene. But when you look at it from that perspective, I think at least it is achieving probably what it is setting out to do, which is to give you that feeling. And then we get, I think, which is a really good character moment, which she just leaves the bank robbery.
She kind of just walks out. Yeah.
She's like, please, this person, my partner's down. And she's like, you got to deal with it. And she like just leaves and she goes after them. And
that poor guy, he looks like he's a Channing Tatum impersonator when he's not appearing in movies.
We just where she basically is watching the bank robbers run away and she sees the, you know, Tatiana Maslany character fall down and the other bank robbers just keep going. They just keep running away. And so she just starts tracking her from farther away to see what she's going to do and where she's going to go. And she confronts her in either a coffee shop / Cold Stone Creamery.
I swear it's a Cold Stone, or I think the building, it said something Creamery. Because
Okay.
I like the idea. There's a moment where Tatiana Maslany's character walks in there and she's got a bullet hole in her leg. Like the bone is broken. It's like shot through her pants and like there's blood and bone splinters. And this little kid's just kind of looking at her like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And I like that when Erin walks in, she's like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, I like that's the vibe. You know, like, leave me alone. Why are you here? You know? And then they get into that fight where they really mess each other up.
Yes,
like,
they do.
time.
It's a great scene.
Really feel it there, right? How I really like in things when the fights, look, I like choreographed, fun, or not even fun, well choreographed action fight scenes where you don't get what you would call a real world consequence for what a punch would do to somebody, right?
Sure.
Or what, you know, that's fine. I like here, though, because we're not in that world, we're not going to do a big choreographed fight. It's not about the action, that you really feel what it would be like if you just got wailed on.
It's a lot of kicks in the ribs. I mean, we're talking about two like older women, like neither one of them a trained fighter or anything like that. Neither one of them is like doing this on a regular basis kind of thing. So yeah, it's just very brutal. It's very, you know, hit them where it hurts kind of thing. It's just this bone crunching kind of awful. But also like, I find this weirdly fun too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I
think this might be one of the most entertaining scenes. Well, this and the Bradley Whitford scene for sure. Yeah. But yeah, it's just these two pretty ordinary people just beating the shit out of each other in an ice cream shop
in
or
front
a
of all
whatever
these
it is.
people.
In front of gawking onlookers. It's great.
Well, that's when one time she's like, I'm a cop. And I'm like, I don't think it matters in this scenario.
She keeps pulling out the badge like I said.
Well, like, that scene with the daughter. You
definitely didn't kill somebody and take that, right?
Yeah. The scene with the daughter in that bar where she's like, I'm a cop. And the bar owner is like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, that's great too.
Like, get out of here. You can't do this. Which I thought was really funny. There's a lot of that, which I like. And the thing I always bring up in this scenario is oddly the Daredevil show, where there's like the famous big Warner hallway fight where he's like fighting all those people. And that I thought was really revolutionary, not only because it's a really, obviously a crazily, from the production side, insane, right? That they did that long of a fight, but just the fact that like he punches people and like they don't just go down and are down forever, right? Yeah. Like he has to punch him like 6 times. And even then in a couple of minutes, they get back up, to fight. You're not a super person, right? You're just punching somebody in the face. And I like stuff like that. Also, Maslany is great. And the other, much like, even though she's not giving the same energy as Whitford, she's one of these performers who just has a ton of charisma and a great screen presence. So when you let her just do her thing in a scene, it works really well. And again, she's giving at least a different energy than Kidman is. Again, I feel like they give her a little bit too much of the kind of stock, like junkie girlfriend energy.
Yeah, she's the mall, the gangster guy's girlfriend. Yeah. I was saying it before. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the two of them together in this movie. I don't know how you would have done it, but she comes into it kind of late. And like, I feel like this character is an interesting counterpoint to Kidman's character that we don't really get enough of. I mean, there's a lot of, like, I don't think the Sebastian Stan character and her get enough screen time together either. So the relationship between them, like, we know it's going to happen, but it just doesn't really hit home the way it should because we just don't really see it. And this movie's a little long as it is, right? Like,
I agree. Yes.
2 hours and 1 minute is pretty long for just like we've been saying, kind of in some ways a standard cop thriller kind of movie. But because there is this character stuff that we kind of need to see and we don't really, like, it also doesn't work. Like, Kusama has described this more as, a character piece and this thing about this unorthodox female character that we've never seen before. Like, she has a great quote about kind of what her intention for this movie was. Right. And you can definitely see glimpses of that here. But because it doesn't really get a chance to breathe, like it's paced pretty well. And it's a little long even with that. But we don't get like the really nice character moments that would make this. I mean, I feel like, throughout this movie, like, I want to know a little bit more about the Erin character. Like, she's a little bit of a cipher and she is a little bit of, like, when there's something that we need to know about her, the thing we go to is the cliche, right? The thing we go is the trope rather than a specific thing. And like you said, where we don't get that, the thing that really, really works is the moment with the daughter, like the revelation about this incident, which was not an important incident in either of their lives, although I do want to talk about that a little bit more later. But like, that's a nice human thing that we don't see nearly enough of here.
I completely agree. And I mean, I do like little things like in that scene with Maslany when she like throws the water jug down by her feet and you don't realize it at that moment, but it's because it's going to be like a couple days before anybody comes and gets you. So here you go. Like, I don't want you to die. So here you go. And I like, she's like, are you going to, you're going to call the police? So, because I think I need some help. She's like, the police will be here.
Well, I also like, she does the thing that happens in the movies all the time where she just throws her in the trunk and Maslany's character just laughs about
She's
that.
She's cackling, laughing. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
What, did you see this in Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah, it's basically the vibe that she's giving off, to her. And then she does this moment too in that scene where she mentioned Chris, right? Like, that's the Sebastian Stan character's name. And we do get, and I think this is intentional, we get the typical like dead girlfriend in the bed in like beautiful, like soft sunlight in the morning shot, but with Sebastian Stan. Yep. Like kind of staring into the camera, or whatever, and they're kind of rolling away or what have you. And you mentioned before, what Kusama said about what she wanted to do here. I think I earnestly believe that is what she's trying to do. And I believe in some ways she pulls it off, but the unfortunate thing is, we don't see a female character doing this a lot, but we have seen just countless male characters doing it. And we are absorbing the whole history of those things into this when we see it. And it can't help but dull the effectiveness of these stereotypes or tropes or what have you, because we've just seen it a million times. And whether or not, from a character perspective, that's why the performance is so good, is the way that stuff plays off of Kidman emotionally is interesting and novel. But from a plot perspective, it makes it very easy just to know what's going to happen, because you're like, obviously, like, this is going to lead to this and this is going to lead to this, because I've seen this character a million times before.
Agreed. And the movie that actually does that really well is sort of, play this gender bending twist on a genre. Gender and genre are such tough words to say in the same sentence. The movie that does that really well is Girl Fight, right? The fact that Michelle Rodriguez's character fights her boyfriend in the final fight in that movie, the one that all of the stakes are kind of leading up to, that is a beautiful sort of inversion of that. That's so clever. And this movie never really does that, right? Like it does swap the genders of the characters kind of going through, you know, the one that gets killed and the one that's dealing with the guilt and the sorrow about that years down the road. Yes, we've kind of reversed that here, but it never makes that sort of very, very clever that like when I saw that in Girl Fight, I talked about it on the show, like just how brilliant that was, just that as an idea. And as I said, I mean, this movie is like, this feels to me, and not to go too far down this road, like the movie I would have liked to see Karyn Kusama make right after Girl Fight is a movie like this, right? Like another genre thing, another sort of feminist take on something that we've seen before. And I know she's interested in doing that. A lower budget thing. I mean, Aeon Flux was a mistake, right? And I think everyone involved and everyone that's seen it basically has that same impression of it. Whereas if you go from Girl Fight to something like this, I think that's a really cool start to a career there, right? Then you kind of can establish this thing that she is still trying to do, 20 years down the road, 25 years down the road.
Yeah.
This feels like, this is the sophomore album after the critically acclaimed debut sort of thing, even though it comes many, many films afterward, some of which were probably ill-advised and very few of which kind of did the same thing or touched on the same sort of idea or the same like intentions that Girl Fight had. And this one really does. I mean, they're kind of a nice companion piece. I'd love to see them back to back.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I think even when we're getting to the end of this movie and we're starting to see more and more of the flashback plot and we get this idea, right, that the reason she's carrying so much guilt is because she basically said to Chris, the Sebastian Stan character, what if we don't turn them in? What if we just take the money and come up with a story that sort of mirrors when they were doing the setup for Silas's character, what they're going to say to the authorities about how they lost them in the fray. Right. They keep the money. And she has that really great scene from Kidman where she has that speech about, I've always been fighting, scrapping, terrified of what's going to come. I just want one day. I want
one day on the other side of that.
Which really was really effective. It's I think something that most people can identify with, right? I just want to feel for one day like I'm not fighting for my life constantly, right? And
it's and I forget exactly how it was said, but I did take this note in the scene. Like, this is the one time we know a little bit about what she was like before she was that sheriff's deputy we saw in the picture earlier, and she had a really rough home life, and we don't know much about it. We don't need to, right? Like, I think it's alluded to, but it's not sort of spelled out. But yeah, we get the sense that this character has always been desperate and she's always been looking for something. And, she finds it in Chris and she finds it in this opportunity to take this money. And it's a pretty good plan that they have. And it's like, I love that it's her idea for them to do something that is against the law. And it's him being a hero, which somebody says that, like he didn't, I think it's Toby that says it earlier. Well, Chris didn't have to be a hero. And when he does that, right, it's him that sort of makes the moral choice that kind of dooms both of them. I like that. Again, I guess that's as close to the thing I was talking about, that sort of gender inversion of what we usually see in these kinds of movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like one of the final scenes we get right in the movie is that scene where she's sort of explaining this. And that's where talking about the two performances sort of meeting in this place where you see that there's something broken about her, even then, when most of the time, otherwise in those flashbacks, what you're getting from her is a much lighter, much seemingly happy person, right? What I like, though, we're talking about it compared to Girl Fight, is when we talked about this a little bit earlier, when they go to that bank to rob it, it's much like in Girl Fight where they never went to like a big arena to fight. It's always like a shitty little place, where it's only a big deal that they're fighting because the place is like little, right? And it's the same thing here, right? It's this shitty bank in the middle of nowhere. Right. It's just like the inside is shitty. The outside is shitty. It's like the Fifth National Trust or whatever. It's like really getting down there on the rungs, right, of level of bank. And I like living in those spaces and I think this is partly why, right, someone like Taylor Sheridan is so successful, right, is showing like the shitty places in between that not a lot of places focus on, right?
Yeah, and not every criminal is like a world-class master criminal and is going to rob the biggest and most, profitable bank in the city, right? Like somebody's got to knock off the shitty little banks. Like it's not exactly the same. It reminds me a little of Raising Arizona, right? The hayseed bank that they knock off at the end, like because one day a month they get like all the deposits in there. So it's for that one, because it's the same thing too, right? It's Petra. Like she's a rich kid, like her father is wealthy and connected and powerful, and she just decides to go this criminal path. And it's through it's through Bradley Whitford's character, who is an associate of her father. She knows that like this is the time to rob this bank. This is when we can get $7 million out of this, otherwise pretty nondescript and non-important bank.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I will say is, because I kind of want to close out talking about that great scene with the daughter. The thing I don't like about some of this reveal stuff, I guess we should talk about the big reveal, right? But is that to make it so blatantly her fault that he died, the fact that he says like, I'm doing this for you and I wouldn't do it for anybody else. It's like, okay, again, you're laying it on just too thick. Like I didn't even need the scene where they explicitly say that, right? The scene before that, where they're just sort of like talking about it and she sort of brings it up, was almost enough for me to understand why now she's carrying all this guilt with her, right? I don't need the explicit scene where it's like, no, you don't understand. Sebastian Stan was a saint and he would, he was just, he would have done anything for the woman he loves and it's all her fault that she died and that's what she's carrying with her. I get that because that more cements why she's so destructive in her life, right? Since this point where she really could never get over it. That and plus, obviously it's this around this time we learned that the daughter is his daughter, right? I just wish that there was a little more subtlety or care in the script. And I also like the whole thing where then he's walking away and she's like, oh, it's very much like that Star is Born moment where she's like, it's a great ass. And he's like, it's all yours. I'm like, what movie is this dialogue exchange from? Because it's not this movie.
Yeah, I forgot about that till you brought it.
Like I get it trying to leave like leave their relationship the last time they really had a real conversation on something light, right? Where she felt like there was hope and happiness coming down the way and it wasn't all just darkness and making these plans.
And she never tells him, right? Like very distinctly, he doesn't know, like we never see him tell him that she's pregnant with his baby. Yeah. It was funny because he's like, just so you know, like if we do this, you better be all in because whatever. I'm like, this is all, you're putting it on too thick. It's too much. It's too much. So around this time, right? Again, these all scenes are all kind of put together, but one of the things she does is she goes to the ex-husband, the whoever, Scoot McNairy, and basically goes like, I've got, basically he knows that she had the money and that she's been hiding it. He also knows who the father is. Like he knows the whole deal. So I liked that he knew her whole situation, right? Aaron's whole situation, and wasn't like something that she had been hiding from him. Right. And she says, I want to give you the money. You can take our daughter out of here. She, you don't want to be here anyway. You don't need to be near me. Like all I do is, destroy things. Just get away from me. Right. And I think that's a good scene between the two of them because I like that, she says at least one good thing will come out of this. Yeah. Make one good thing happen for everything that I've done.
Yeah. And he said that I could have done that, or I could have been that, or whatever. So I like that scene. And then he's like, he's not going to take the money. And then he's kind of like, all right, go get the money or whatever. She goes to the storage locker, give him the money, and the money has dye all over it, right? Well, she starts flipping out, and then she realizes there's some that's clean, and this is when she bribes. Again, this is another thing too, where it's just like this guy keeps coming back, fucking Jay keeps coming back, and this scene where I just don't get the purpose of this scene, right? The purpose of the scene with Jay bribing him, getting him away. And there's a thing where she's like, this is not going to make her love you. And she's like, she doesn't have to love me. And, Jay walks away or whatever with the money.
More philosophical and thoughtful than you'd expect from Jay in that moment.
Exactly.
It's a little out of character for Jay.
Yes. Yeah. She loves me, but I'm like, what? I don't understand what this character is supposed to be, conveying to me.
She hangs out at bars with you. She's 16 and you're in your 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then he basically does it. He goes, he says, you better not send me the money, which I think is really taking it on faith that he's going to move away and then expect her to send him the money or
to Spokane. Yeah.
to Spokane or whatever. So we get that scene. And then we finally get sort of, she's tracked down Silas where he's going to be. And she goes and sees him. And we got a couple of the shots. This is the scene I expected to get. I expected to get that scene we get a couple lines from where he's like, I see what you really are or whatever. There's like a flashback scene between the two of them talking.
Yeah. I
expected to get the whole scene of them talking with her. I was like, okay, we're finally going to get like the Silas scene, right?
Well, this is, it's an Apocalypse Now kind of story, right? He's Colonel Kurtz. She's been tracking him the entire time. And when they finally meet each other in the end, you do expect something just dramatic and explosive. And instead, she basically just shoots him.
She basically shoots him.
Which is great. Say, honestly, I kind of like that better.
Yeah, no. I like that too. It was just the movie built him up so much. The one really big thing he gets to do is, he during the flashback bank robbery, he tells this, sweet looking young blonde teller, he goes like, there's not a die pack in this money, right? And she goes, no. And then they're out of the bank.
I like this moment a lot, right? Yeah. Like this says to me a lot about who Silas is. And, we have been building him up through the entire movie and he walks out and it just explodes all over him. It's like this purple dust and he looks fucking ridiculous. He's got that wig and it's just like he's covered in purple dust and purple paint. And it's like, it's almost a comedic scene. Yeah. And, he goes back in basically just because like she made an ass out of him. Like he's just embarrassed. And it shows that he is nowhere near this sort of brilliant criminal that we were sort of anticipating him to be. And he just goes back in and shoots her and Chris shoots him and,
Well, Chris doesn't even get to shoot him, basically.
Well, right. Chris pulls his gun out and he shoots Chris.
He shoots Chris.
And then, make sure he takes him out on the way out. But I did like that moment. That wide shot with Toby Kebbell there where the die pack explodes on him is just so silly and so goofy. And it's just like, like he just doesn't want to embarrass himself in front of his crew that he's put together in this movie. He's like, oh, I got to go shoot this chick now because I got to save a little bit of face here. And, that's your heavy. That's your big villain in this movie is, that moment.
That is the moment. And Chris, does the classically stupid thing that law enforcement people do in movies where he like yells,
locks eyes with Nicole Kidman outside and then goes in. And
I don't mind. I don't mind that.
I like that. I think that's it's a very tense scene as she's
and her being like, no. What are you doing? Like, no.
I like that a lot.
And then, but when he runs in and he goes like up and then he just turns around and shoots him, like, just shoot him. What are you?
Yeah.
You don't have to announce yourself. You saw him rob a bank.
He's got a gun.
He's got a gun on an innocent person. Just shoot him. Don't announce yourself and give him a chance to shoot you. Right. So there's that. And then I do like James Jordan in that scene when they're driving away and he's like, he has the gun on and he's like, you're not a fucking cop, are you? And he's like freaking out. And then, we get her big, like anguished scream scene. Then we get to see her kill Silas. And that's when we realize, right, that the body they found at the beginning of the movie was Silas. And we've been seeing kind of a flashback to the day before or a couple days before the whole time. And I did like that reveal. I was like Christopher Nolan light, like sort of.
It is Christopher. Reveal. That's such a good way to describe it too. It is Christopher Nolan light because, a much more clever movie than this one. You're not thinking about who that John Doe is through the entire movie. But because we never see his face in the beginning, we know he has the tattoo. We've seen everybody else in the gang, so we know it can't be anybody else. So like, again, it's a good twist, but it's also not that much of a twist, right? Like we are, at least me as a viewer, and I'm, as we've kind of talked about on this episode today, I'm not always the fastest on the draw when it comes to figuring stuff out in a movie, plot wise. But the whole time I'm thinking, okay, we got to find out who that person was, right? Like this movie's not going to end and have that just be still an unknown, a John Doe sort of person. And so there's literally nobody left that it could be at that point.
Well, for me, I wasn't even thinking it was a member of their group. I was thinking it's just somebody else in like his gang of people, whoever it was, because there were all those people
recruited later on or something.
Yeah, because all the people who robbed the bank aren't people that they knew before, right? Except for Tatiana Maslany's character. So I just assumed it was like, oh, he's back, like doing his shit. Like,
this felt like a machine with a missing piece or a puzzle with a missing piece. And it's like,
I wasn't even considering
that's going to click into place by the end.
I wasn't even considering it. I thought it was just the impetus for her to be like, oh, he's back. Like it was like a sign from him basically that he was back. So I wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, this movie's not going to have any like twist or any weird, time.
Well, I mean, I didn't expect the twist to be quite as big and quite as major as it was, but I was like, something like this person is someone, right? Like this has to be something that is connected to all this.
Yeah. But again, the movie, and I don't know in which stage it was, the script stage, or it was in the editing stage, or just was like a directorial choice. I don't need to see the scene again from the beginning where she's like, I guess I know who did it or whatever. I don't need to see that scene again. I'm watching the movie. I get it, right?
Well, that's for the benefit of slow people like me. It's, oh, yeah, right. She knows who did it.
I know why they do it.
Whoa, she did it.
Yeah. I know why they do it.
The killer was me all along.
But one thing, this is one of these movies where it's like you said, like it's not built like a movie that people are expecting a ton of people to see, so just let the movie be a little bit more daring, I would guess is I think the main thing about the movie that I think is missing a little bit.
There was a review of this. So she, in the first scene in the movie, she goes back to her car after she says, what if I knew who did it? And then she just kind of walks away and they're like, okay, whatever, drunkie. They don't even like, if you're a cop and someone says, I know who killed this guy, maybe ask some questions. Yeah. However you feel about her. Terrible police work in that opening scene. But she goes back into her car and she's just sort of sitting there. These great, it's the first shot we see of her blue eyes. I think they're contacts. Maybe, I don't know. But her eyes open. I love shots like extreme close-ups of eyes just opening like that. It's a trope that a lot of movies use. And I always think that's an interesting looking shot. She goes in her car and there's these skateboarders. She's at an underpass. And there's these skateboarders just doing tricks, just skateboarding behind where her car is. And we hear the noise of that. And then that's when we cut to the title Destroyer. And that's what sort of, and like, I guess that was the other thing, right? Like, is that significant? Did Karyn Kusama just want to get some skateboarding in this movie? Like, what is that all about, right? So I guess in some sense I did kind of know that this was going to be something, right?
Well, that feels like you're saying about it being a follow-up to Girl Fight. That very much felt like early, like it's like one of my first movies and it's an indie.
It's local color kind of thing.
Local color, like let's have people skateboarding in slow motion, the kind of thing where
but it does kind of linger on that for quite a while. And the sound, it's the last thing we hear before we cut to that title. And it's just such an intense sort of, it's a real punctuation mark of a title, Destroyer, right? And I just... something about that said that had to be something. And, I mean, not that it was much, right? But she does die in this moment, which I had to look this up afterward, right? I mean, I know she sustained a lot of injuries. She lifts her shirt up, but we see some bruising and we see some purple paint, like from the money that she's been carrying with the purple dye on it. But like, what actually kills her? I guess internal bleeding or something.
That's what it looks like. Because that's messed up looking. Like that's not normal bruising. Like that is looks like internal bleeding to me.
But I mean, even that's kind of an interesting choice, right? Like if he had gotten a shot off and, she got shot in the gut and then we see like, that's such a cliche, right? She opens up her jacket or her shirt and there's a bullet hole there that we didn't notice before, right? And she's been limping through the whole movie, which is, we're going to talk about the daughter scene still, right?
That's what we're going to do next. The last thing we're going to talk about is the
daughter scene. Again, I just wanted to mention one little bit
because it really bookends with the very, very end of the movie, right? So that's why I want to talk about it at the end.
So anyways, just to finish that thought, I like that she just sort of succumbs to this injury that's like, not the gravest injury, right? Like if she went to a hospital, she'd probably be fine.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But she is kind of, we know she's on this destructive path anyway. And so she just kind of, it's almost like she's waiting for it to happen. It's taking a little too long. Like she doesn't want to be in that car, just staring at the sun for as long as she is. And it's just kind of not happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say that's one of the times where, not that concept, which I think is great, where in that special feature, they talk about the makeup. And it honestly isn't that much makeup that they have on her. They just added some like extra skin, like over here.
At times it looks like more than it is and more than it should be. But for the most part, it's pretty subtle.
It's pretty subtle.
And it is like the physicality of the performance, the limp and just the gait and the facial expressions. Like that's where we get that this character is old and broken down, right? Like I almost think they didn't really need the makeup.
No, I mean, Nicole Kidman is a striking looking person.
She is, but
very striking,
very good looking people have been, Charlize Theron in Monster is the perfect example.
Yes,
but
Charlize Theron in Monster has a lot going on with her. I don't think that is just a pure, like, I didn't put any makeup on and I put a black wig on. I think there's some stuff going on. She gained a lot of weight, all that kind of stuff for that role. There was definitely physical transformation stuff going there. Nicole Kidman is just one of these people. She's so striking looking. Also, she's had famous plastic surgery done. So I just don't think that her, without that stuff, would have given across what they wanted to get across. That being said, they did, I think, go a little bit too far on again, it's just like everything else with this sort of stereotypical off the rack stuff being like, if we make her look kind of ugly, it'll make her seem more like a real person. That is what it feels like to me. I will say, I think whether it was the makeup or whatever, there was a lot of times where I was not thinking about the fact that it was Nicole Kidman playing the role. Right. And I think that is to her, that is a compliment to her and her performance. She was not pulling out like any of the Nicole Kidman things that she does when she's doing big performances. And I thought that was very impressive.
How do you feel about her as the younger version of herself? This undercover character with the dark hair and the jacket. I
liked it. I
didn't think that was too bad either. And seeing someone of her age playing to she's supposed to be like in her 20s or something at that point. That can usually be a little cringe. And I didn't feel like it was here. It worked pretty well. I will say, can I just say one thing really quick? Yeah, that's what I'm saying about her playing the same age as Sebastian Stan or Tatiana Maslany, which I think, and she pulls it off. You keep saying that she's playing older. I don't think she's playing actually older than she actually is in real life in this movie. Oh, no. And maybe that's just because she looks younger than she's in her 50s or something.
She's in her
like
50s.
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's in her 50s.
Yeah. So the character is probably in her 50s. That's I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not playing movie star 50. She's playing normal person.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the scene with the daughter, which we've talked about really since the beginning of this podcast, and it's probably oversold it because I don't think there's any way we can talk about it in a way that'll pay off. I
just heard our first episode again, and I talked about that scene in Tron Legacy, where Jeff Bridges is just sort of looking at Miles. I was going to call him Miles Teller, Garrett Hedlund and Olivia Wilde's characters. And I was just so blown away by that. So you can have this scene because this one is way better than that.
It's a great scene. So when the scene starts, so basically we've had a couple of these scenes where the Nicole Kidman character tries to talk to her daughter and they keep getting interrupted or they keep going wrong. And when we go into this scene in the movie, I was kind of like, oh, here we go. Like another one of these scenes. Like this one's going to end a little better because it's obviously we're at the end of the movie. So there's got to be some sort of...
At least Jay is not going to be involved in this.
Yeah, exactly. Jay's in Spokane. So there's going to be some sort of resolution. And I was not prepared, honestly, for just how great the scene was between them. Like I said before, the performances are both out of this world good. They're both feeding off each other really, really well. And I have her name down here. Jade Pettyjohn is the name of the actress who played the daughter. And I love how there are several off ramps in the scene where she almost leaves, or the scene and their dialogue almost kind of goes off the rails because one of them is saying the wrong thing. Usually the Aaron character is saying the wrong thing, but they don't know how to talk to each other. Right. So they almost have to start talking to each other by not talking to each other. Right. And it really begins when the daughter starts talking about, I have this stupid counselor at school and she's worth nothing, but the thing she might do is try to think about one memory from my childhood. And she's
one happy memory. She's like, I couldn't come up with anything, but this was the best I could do. And I love this, right?
Yeah.
Like it is not a happy memory at all.
No, it's a terrifying memory.
Pretty much the opposite of that in every way. But it's, like that's the closest that she got. And what I like, throughout this movie, right? Like, it's not like Nicole Kidman's character ever thinks she was a good mother in any way. Like, she knows that she's fucked this thing up in every possible way she could. She never, like, if she ever tried, like, I'm not sure she ever even made an attempt.
Right.
It's not one of those people who just did it wrong. It's like someone who just barely even did it, barely even tried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she tells this story about one day her mom came to pick her up from school early, and they drove up to the woods to go for a hike.
Camping. Which is which kind of, I thought that was going to be more than that, right? Like I thought it was going to be like, they were going up to the woods and she wasn't prepared, and that's kind of where this goes. I thought it was because they were trying to get away from someone or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, but I kind of like that's not the reason why.
Yeah, no, it was just kind of a random thing. Like, oh, this one time I tried to be nice to my kid and I did this.
But I still didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? So I go up to camp, but I don't really have the right supplies. They get caught in bad weather and they get stuck, overnight. And I love her kind of asking her mom, like, did this really happen? Like, I don't even know if it really happened. And she's like, yeah, it really happened. We were there for, overnight. And I love her explaining the thing about this scene. We talked about this a couple times in this podcast. There's such specificity to the dialogue, right? And they're not things that are things you've heard a million times before in scenes like this or in movies, right?
Right. She didn't have boots. She wore her sneakers, and they were so worn that there were holes in them by the time because they had to walk back through the snow. Yeah.
And this idea of like, and I love this moment. She says like, I wasn't scared. She goes, because I knew how tough you were and how you could protect me. But I also knew something was wrong. Like something was wrong with you. Like you were messed up in some way. And I kept asking you, why were we there? Why were we there? And you wouldn't give me anything. Right. And it's this beautiful thing that writing can do where it kind of boil down their entire relationship into this one experience. Right. Yep. Whereas like her mom she had a shitty mom. Right. And her mom was angry all the time and sad all the time and destructive all the time. And just would never say what was going on. Why was she feeling this way? If she had just talked to her daughter, I'm really sad because of a whatever it was, they could have had a relationship, right? It could have salvaged their relationship, but even with that, she knew that her mom would always show up and be there, even if it wasn't in the way that she wanted her to be there or that was appropriate or, was comforting, but there was always going to be her there. And the great thing about this scene is most of the big dialogue scenes, Nicole Kidman has at least, if not all of the dialogue, a big share of the dialogue. And in this, she has much less of the dialogue and it's much more about reacting. And that moment where she's talking about how the daughter's talking about how she felt safe and all this stuff, and the reaction from Nicole Kidman, the way she starts crying. And like that moment where she just realizes like, not that she fucked up, like you said, she always knew she fucked up, but seeing more how she fucked it up, right? I thought was really, really powerful.
Yeah. And that there was maybe a chance to get it back. And she blew that too, right? Like there was a way that she could have, if she had been that person in a more positive way, everything in some sense would have worked out. I do like, I don't remember exactly how the scene, they don't hug or anything, right? Like this is pretty, it's left pretty ambiguous or left kind of there. Like she cries a little bit, which is the first time we really see that in the film. And that's really all we get, which is nice. I don't want any more than that. This does not need to go into histrionics. It's great. It's a really, really, really great scene. I really like, just because I've been alluding to it the whole time, I read the IMDb trivia for this. And supposedly the reason why that character in her older age that we see through the entire film has a limp is from that experience walking in the woods with the shoes that were not for that. She got frostbite because you assume, right? Like my whole thing was, either she's just an alcoholic and she's just ill, or I thought she sustained, an injury from, at first I thought, because we don't know how the bank robbery goes down for most of the movie. Right, so I figured she got shot in the leg or something like that. Or then we see her crash the van with Toby in it behind her. So like that could easily cause a limp as well. But the idea that it was actually stemmed from this other thing, which had nothing to do with any of that, I like that idea so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely, it's great.
Nice little character detail. Again, I mean, these writers are a little hit and miss. Sorry, Karyn Kusama's husband, but we've seen them do some pretty great stuff and some things that were questionable. But I do like, there's some choices in this one that I do think, I mean, the script is not perfect. I think it, like I say about a lot of things, could have maybe used another pass. Yeah. But there's some really great moments in it, some great ideas in it. And I do think those guys are, pretty talented writing team. I've been interested, I want to see where they go from here.
Yeah. the other thing about this, I like that there's a couple of times where, you know, she talks a little bit, like you said, about Erin talks a little about her childhood and, you know, how it sucked and, you know, and the daughter is kind of like, yeah, well, that's too bad, you know, but like, that's not my fault or whatever. Right. And she goes, yeah, it's just an excuse. Like, it's just an excuse. It's just another fucking excuse that I've got. And she has this great line, which I took a note on, which just says, I didn't want you to be like me. I'm mad. I'm still fucking mad. It's a burned circuit in my brain. I just love that idea. Like, this is just me. I cannot get out of this now. Like, I'm always going to be like this. She admits and tells her that it was her fault that her dad died. And there's the other great scene where, you know, she's talking about like, I want to tell you about your father. And he goes like, I forgot Scoot McNairy. Scoot's my father or whatever.
Yeah.
Ethan. And I love that little tiny line from Erin where she goes, then start acting like it, you know, like,
or let him be,
or whatever it is. Then let him be. Yeah. Then let him be. Like you all that's like, I like that appeal. I think finally works with her, right? Not the, you don't know where this leads. Like you're messing up your whole life. Like, I can't believe what you're doing. None of that worked. Right. But this idea is like, you've got this guy who obviously, you know, is good and solid and loves you. Right. Yep. Stop pretending like, just like me, right? Just like me, who uses other things as an excuse. Like she's talking to her too, like being mad and being, you know, using me as an excuse to be a bad person. Like you have this other person. Stop acting like you don't have this other person who is there for you and who will support you. And I think that's really great, you know, writing and framing, you know, for the scene. So that was the scene where I was like, this sequence, when you were kind of revealing, you know, we're getting the bank robbery scene, the final bank robbery scene, we're getting this scene, we're getting the, you know, reveal of the kind of like the rearranged time stuff.
The confrontation with Silas, which is not really a confrontation at all.
This stuff, I was like, okay, maybe this is a 4 out of 5. Like I was into it, you know?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of good scenes in succession here and a lot of just good choices and good ideas that are like, there is, I think it's one of the most positive reviews of the movie. And I forget, I think it was from The Playlist. I forget the critic's name, but he basically kind of divides this movie in half and says the first half is pretty clunky and derivative. And, you know, it doesn't feel like it's going to be something great. And then if you give it time and you just sort of go along with it, the second half, the ideas get really good. And this becomes like a genuinely great movie, whereas there's really nothing to sort of herald that in the first half. I don't entirely agree with that. I think there are some good moments in the first half, but it gets better as it goes on. And, you know, if it is a character piece and we're kind of slowly revealing things about this character as the film kind of gets toward the end of it, yeah, I mean, I guess you do. You have to be patient with it and it will reward that patience. I agree with that aspect of the review.
I mean, Mahola Dargis liked it from the New York Times and she's notoriously a tough critic.
She is, yeah.
She liked it a lot. I mean, like you said, it was a okay received movie, but it made really no impression. Like I think this is one of those movies that needed to have, you know, just unanimous praise for it to get any sort of chance of grabbing on in any sort of way. Yeah. And it just didn't. So people ignored it. You know, it was just one of those movies that gets thrown onto like the, you know, Oscar discard pile, right? Where they're like,
well, and not even that. It's the kind of movie that gets advertised on a streaming service. And it's like, oh, there's a really famous person in this. I've never heard of it. So it must be garbage, right? It must be something where the studio just kind of tossed it off. And it's like,
that's where it ends up, right?
We'll kind of sell this. It does, but it's so much better. Like I watched a film the other night. I love Sam Rockwell. And I've been seeing, I think it's on, you know, one of my streaming services, Single Shots from 2013. And I was like, what is this movie? It's like a noir with Sam Rockwell and William H. Macy's in it. And I was like, wow, like I missed this movie. This could be something great. And then I watched it and it's like pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Like it's maybe one of the worst movies I've ever seen him in, but like there's so many of those, right? Like I see these ads and there's like a famous person, you know, Morgan Freeman or something like that. Like, okay, they don't make crap, but actually sometimes they do.
Oh, he's made so much crap.
Yeah. Well, bad example. Yeah. He's been in some rough ones. Edison Force is the one I always think of.
Yeah. He's one of those guys who just, and so I have some respect for people like this, where he's just like, I don't really think about it like a like a career, like a body of work that you're going to look at as a whole.
I'll show up and do my thing. And I'm Morgan Freeman. I got the greatest voice. I got the butter pipes, and I'll do that for you. Yeah. He's a bad example, but there are decent actors, right? Where like Tom Holland made a movie a couple of years, like some kind of PTSD, like war drama, and it was really poorly received. Yeah. But you're going to see that in a couple of years, and there'll be a picture of him in a uniform. Like, oh, this like prestige serious movie with Tom Holland in. I'm going to check that out.
I'm pretty sure that was a Russo's.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that the one with what's his name? Isn't that one with
I don't know. I didn't see it. Nobody else did either.
No, that's the Devil All the Time or whatever is the thing.
Oh, I really like that movie.
Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong movie then.
No, that's him and Pattinson. Yeah, that's like a Southern Gothic. Oh, that movie's great. You should check it out.
Cherry? Is Cherry the one where he's...
Cherry is the one I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, Cherry's the one. That's the one. That's
the Devil All the Time. Like the reason, I mean, that's another thing that happens, right? You get this prestige movie with a good director and great actors and great cinematography and stuff, but it's just so dark and fucked up that like no mainstream audience is ever going to accept it. That's what that one is. Yeah,
Cherry is the Russo brothers.
Yeah.
That's what Cherry is.
That's the Afghanistan drama or whatever it is.
Yeah, and they're both Netflix movies. That's why I was confused.
Yeah,
that's why I got them confused. Yeah, but you're exactly right. When there's someone who's that big of a star in a movie and you've never heard of it, often my first thought is this movie must be terrible because I'd never heard of it. And often, like we're saying, that's the case, right? But I just knew when it first came out, right? The idea would have been, I'm sure from the distributor would have been, if this gets like unanimously great reviews, it has a chance to be in the conversation with critics enough where it can get some awards buzz. And then maybe when we put it on a streaming service, some people will watch it and it's not going to be a huge hit, but it will be something. Right? But what happens, the other line of that is people liked it okay. And nobody is in the place in 2019 where they're going to the movies to see something they have know nothing about that got pretty okay, reviews.
Well, like a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Drama nomination is not going to get you over the line. A Best Actress Academy Award nomination, then people are going to check this out.
Exactly, right, exactly. So that's the thing. That's what I meant by the Oscar discard pile. I meant like these are the things that potentially could have had some buzz but never got it. And so they just kind of get shuttled off into this other, almost worse than being a movie that came out and got really bad reviews. Because at least that would have been memorable, right? It gets thrown into this like pile of just obscurity that no one's ever going to think about.
It's better to get a Razzie than to get nothing at all.
Yes, exactly in this case. So, that happens when it happens. You mentioned Morgan Freeman and that the career that when I brought about the career thing is that I remember Nicolas Cage talked about this and they asked him about doing all the bad movies. And he goes, like, you know how many actors just want to be able to do movies and I'm going to sit there and be like, no, I'm not doing your movie because it's not good enough for me. Basically is what he said. He's like, no. He's like, if I can get the work, I'm going to do the work, and that's what I'm going to be. And I think obviously some of that came out of that era where he had to do the work because he owed all that money to the IRS.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
but we're well past that now. We're well past that era now. And he still does the same thing. He still is just like, whatever, man, I'm going to do whatever shit I'm going to do, and that's it.
Well, and producers and filmmakers have learned how to leverage that, right? Yeah. Like, you hire Nicolas Cage and he's going to do something, it's going to be a Mandy or it's going to be a Longlegs or, something like that. And that's what I want to see Nicolas Cage in anyway, right? I don't want him doing these sort of standard roles that anybody else could play. I want to see something where Nicolas Cage can Nicolas Cage the shit out of it. And he always does. He very rarely gives a lazy performance. They're not all good performances, but they are never lazy and thoughtless performances. He's going for it. And, I respect it. He's one of my favorite actors.
Well, there's that hilarious Community episode where the whole thing is like Abed takes a class, a Nicolas Cage, good or bad. And then he has like a mental breakdown because he tries to watch every Nicolas Cage movie and give a presentation on it. It's hilarious if people haven't seen it. It's really good.
Missed that show a lot.
Well, that movie should be coming out next year, I think.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Sure, it should.
It kept getting delayed and everyone was like, it's Donald Glover's fault. And like, I forgot it was Joel McHale to come out and be like, guys, it's not Donald Glover's fault.
Just because he's really successful. Yeah, everyone wanted to blame it on him.
It's not his fault. There's like 9 people have to be in this movie and we all have careers at this point, whether, in different levels of success. We're all busy. We have to figure it out. So anyway, that's the last Destroyer. This is the last Karyn Kusama film that we'll be talking about. Next week, we're going to do a little bonus. We're going to talk about the pilot episode of Yellow Jackets, which I think will be a lot of fun. And we'll sort of close out our Kusama miniseries on something in her TV work, which I think is a big part of her career, obviously now. Yellow Jacket's one of the shows she had the most involvement in. I believe that she's like an executive producer and has a creative input into that show.
Yeah, directed the first episode. I actually was just reading today, and I should have written down the title of it. She has another series in development that I think is coming out next year too. So I think she is probably moving in the TV direction kind of more than anything at this point.
I mean,
which is a good place to be at this.
Good place to be
at this juncture.
You can get a lot of good work. You can do a lot you can't do in movies.
People are going to see the follow-up to Yellow Jackets, whatever it's called, much more than they're going to see Destroyer, which is too bad because Destroyer is a pretty good movie.
It's pretty good. Yeah. Again, it's pretty good. But would I tell somebody who doesn't watch as many movies as me to seek out Destroyer over a whole host of other movies? Probably not.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the thing that's a little bit not damning about it. That's too strong of a word, but there are different levels, different people. Right. And I find watching stuff like this interesting because it's like, well, this is like I didn't know about this, but it's got a really great performance. And like, that's enough for me. I mean, there are movies like if you haven't seen The Invitation, I would tell people to watch The Invitation, no matter how many movies they watch.
Well, this
Jennifer's
one,
Body is the same thing. I would say the same thing.
Like for me, like the person I would recommend Destroyer to is one that is not as just sort of savvy to all the cliches and the tropes that are in this as we are, because I think that hurts the movie for us. But if these things are really going to genuinely surprise you, like that twist could hit pretty hard. I feel like this could be a movie that you will remember. Even the scene we were talking about before where this movie goes, way darker than we expect it to, or more degrading than we expect it to. Yeah. That's going to be a shocking moment to someone who hasn't seen Bad Lieutenant, right? So maybe there is an audience for this that's just not as familiar with what this movie is doing, that is stock, that is generic than we are. I don't know.
That's true. I mean,
or maybe that's giving us a little too much credit.
Yeah, maybe it's giving us a little too much credit. There are great scenes in this movie. And like I said, I think it's a movie worth seeing. Yeah. But would I tell people to see it over some of the other movies we've mentioned that it sort of takes inspiration from? Probably not. I would, if you haven't seen the, XYZ Michael Mann movie or whatever, I would probably tell you to watch those movies first. You're
saying this is not as good as Heat?
I'm saying it's not as good as Heat.
You're right, of course.
Yeah. Maybe it's as good as Public Enemies. Maybe it's a little bit better than Public Enemies. That's possible.
It's
not every Michael Mann movie is a well, yeah, but The Keep wasn't even really a finished movie.
I know.
That's not fair.
The Keep has its moments.
Yeah. Look, again, really, I think once again, though, it proves that what we said last time, she's a real ass filmmaker. The movie, she's able to do really interesting things on a very low budget. Obviously good with actors. These are all things. And this is probably why she's doing so well and having so much success on TV, right? Because this world of shoestring budgets and performance really, really mattering and really maximizing your days and how you're shooting out your scenes, being able to run a set, being able to really harangue a lot of different aspects is really transfers well over into that side.
Well, I think so. And actually throughout this movie, I was thinking, they gave that last season of True Detective to Issa Lopez and thought she did a really good job with it. But like if they were looking for a female writer director to do another, I think Lopez is going to do the next. They did renew it. They're going to do a 5th season, which I'm excited for because of course I am. But like I could totally see Karyn Kusama working in True Detective. I actually think based on this film, she would have been a great choice for that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. One of the things I said on the feature was that and one thing that Kidman actually said that I think was interesting. She goes, Karyn she has an amazing grasp of everything that goes on a movie set. Every aspect of it, every technical aspect of it, every administrative aspect of it. She just knows how to do everything. And in that same interview, him and Freddie were saying, we actually had to be like, Karyn, the producer, that wasn't there, it was the producer, was like, you don't worry about the budget. Don't worry about the schedule. We'll handle it. You just focus on the creative stuff. That's all I need you to worry about, And I think that speaks to the success she's had in TV as well, because that's a very important part. And again, whatever is best for her as a creative person is what she should do. I wish she got a chance to make more movies. I wish she was she was given like you said, a little bit of more of a crack at a major work to really sink her teeth into, right? I think that, I think Girl Fight, first movie, right? You can't really have it's really tough to movie as small as Girl Fight and it be a major work. It's very close to being a major work, right? But it's a fantastic first movie. Obviously, Aeon Flux issues, right? Disaster in many ways. Watching Jennifer's Body again, like I think that as far as her career goes, I think is a major work from the because it has such a force of a script behind it, right? It's got great performances. Obviously, for the public, it was not a major work at the time. But
yeah, the problem with Jennifer's Body was that nobody saw it, right? Like it just wasn't a successful movie. It has nothing to do with its quality or with its, the stamp that she put on it and Diablo Cody as well. Like, I mean, I don't know if we're doing this episode or we're doing it the next one, but I would say of the 5 films we've seen, 4 of them are really good. Yeah,
no, I think we should probably do the ranking now because we're not doing a movie next time. It's not like we're not gonna.
Okay. I mean, I think they're going to be exactly the same, but like you agree with me, right? Like she has not made a full-on stinker. Yeah, I mean, Aeon Flux is close, but
Aeon Flux is the closest one. But like you said, it's too interesting.
To just completely dismiss it. Right. Agreed. And of her other movies, there's not a bad one in the bunch. Like I actually, I kind of have a tough time ranking her movies because I really like pretty much all of them except for Aeon Flux.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. So I'm going to say, you want to do my rankings first?
Sure. Unless you want to go back and forth. I don't know. You don't stand on ceremony the way I do. So
we can go back and forth. I'm fine going back and forth.
All right. Well, my number 5 is Aeon Flux.
You're just mad at me for that one for the other video we did where I made you go all yourself.
I'm not mad. I'm over it.
I'm not mad.
I'm not going to beat the shit out of you at a Cold Stone Creamery.
So, okay, let's go back and forth. Let's start with our least favorite.
Well, which is Aeon Flux, right?
It's Aeon Flux. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. And then this one, it does get tough. I think Destroyer would be my, what is it? Number 4? I guess you had 5 films, right?
I think we're going to be exactly that. Well, can I do see, like I always have to cop out with this, right? Can I do the ones I liked the best and then the ones that are objectively the best?
No. We're not playing that game. You do the same. Just do the same thing. All right.
Well, and that's where this gets hard, right? Like after Aeon Flux, I think they are all like of the same caliber in some sense.
I agree with you. I do agree with you.
So it's a little bit harder to rank. I would say Destroyer comes in at number 4 for me.
Okay, so we're the same there.
Okay.
My number 3. This is tough.
Yeah, these are all
very close. Here's the thing. My 3 and 2 are tough. I know what my number 1 is. But 3 and 2 are tough. I would say I'm going to say The Invitation at 3.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we're a little bit different there. I'm going to go Girl Fight 3.
Okay. Girl Fight's my number 2.
Okay. I mean, not that there's anything bad about it. I just think that like in terms of what they are doing and the ambition of them, like Girl Fight is a very small movie in a lot of ways. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think she swings for bigger things later on. And I appreciate that.
As opposed to the giant scope and epic scope of The Invitation.
Yeah, but it's a very different kind of movie. No, anyway, okay. So I'm going Aeon Flux, Destroyer, Girl Fight. You're going Aeon Flux, Destroyer, The Invitation. So what is your number 2?
Girl Fight was number 2.
Okay, your Girl Fight's your number 2.
Yeah.
This is where things get very difficult for me, right? Like, I think The Invitation's a better movie than Jennifer's Body, but I really like Jennifer's Body. So I'm going to go number 2, The Invitation, number 1, Jennifer's Body.
Number's 1, Jennifer's Body for me too. Absolutely. Okay. Why would you say? I'm just curious. Why do you think The Invitation is, quote unquote, better than Jennifer's Body, even though you like Jennifer's Body more?
Because I think it's just it tries to do less and it's more successful in the things that it tries to do.
Okay.
So, it just like Jennifer's Body to me, it's like it should have been a cult classic. It should have been a phenomenon and it just wasn't. And particularly seeing it the second time in the context of the show, in the context of her career, I loved that movie. Like I just appreciated it so much. And I wanted it to be like one of those generational things, like I talk a lot about, and it's fascinating to me. Like I work with college students and a lot of them have seen some of the movies that we grew up with. Scream is a movie that like the original Scream, Wes Craven's Scream from 96. They love that movie, which, you think that generation doesn't watch movies that existed before they were born, right? And they do, and they really like that one. And I want Jennifer's Body to be that movie for a generation, and it's just never going to be. And I don't know, there's like an underdog thing about it. I also just love Diablo Cody as a writer, and like I just think it's such a good movie that got such a bad reputation and didn't deserve it at all. So it stands out for me. Like how was that not a hit? How was that not successful?
I completely agree with everything that you're saying, and I also think she gets the best performance anyone could possibly get out of that actress, you know, in Megan Fox. Like it is like she's never been as good as that. And like,
no. And like, you know, I haven't really followed her career, and I know she hasn't been in much lately, but like when people think of Megan Fox now, they don't think of that movie, and that sucks. That's not fair, because she's great in it. It is a movie built for her. She's great in it. Like, you know, I'm not a fan of hers in the sense that I'm going to watch everything she's ever done, but like that is her movie. And you know, I hate to even make the comparison, like Marilyn Monroe, like Some Like It Hot or something, like, you know, it's like
a comparison. I love it.
I know, but it's like, it's
no,
one
I
of those,
love
like Marilyn Monroe was not a great actor, but she was this persona, right? And she was very, very famous for being this person. You know, everybody knows the face, and I feel like few people, particularly now, have seen her movies. I haven't seen most of her movies, but like this was that moment for Megan Fox, and she never got it. And that bums me out, because it actually is a genuinely good movie that is interesting in so many different ways, and deserves the love that it never got.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I would say, like, overall, like, I think we talked about this when we were doing it, but when we watched Aeon Flux, I was like, is this going to be like a little bit of a bummer of a miniseries, you know? Like it just because I really don't want our start out with something like Girl Fight and be like, this director has so much promise, and to be like,
because that's happened before, right?
Yes.
Like there have been these indie directors who came out with something like A Girl Fight that was moderately successful and got very good reviews and launched careers, and then everything they made afterward was just, you know, kind of paled in comparison to that thing that they made for $1 million or whatever in that sort of indie era that Girl Fight kind of just, as we talked about, caught the end of. So I mean, but like, I guess I knew that wasn't going to be the case because I had seen The Invitation,
right?
And
right.
I knew how good that was. So.
Yes, absolutely. But what I was going to say is, after watching Jennifer's Body, I was like, I could watch this every year. Like I could set an appointment every October. I'm going to watch Jennifer's Body as part of like the movies I watch every year. And
I feel like I'm going to put it into the rotation too. Like I forgot how good it was.
Fun ass movie to watch. You know what I mean? It just was a great time with a bunch of really funny performances, you know, with like, it was so rare to get what I feel like is lightning in a bottle. And like what you said, for it not to be something that caught on, because I really feel like it's lightning in a bottle, like the Megan Foxness of it, the Diablo Cody of it, but just because of all of these other factors that were going on that had nothing to do with the movie, it got squashed and forgotten and sort of left in a dirt pile, you know, until it was sort of reclaimed a few years ago. But people
would like put it on a shelf with like Gigli or something like that, and
exactly.
It's so not that.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I'm like, I could watch this all the time. Like, just have a great time watching this and laughing at the lines that we talked about that are like too far, but also, you know, just being like, this is ridiculous that this was a line in a major motion picture, you know, but
I think you need to move on.org about that.
Yeah, you need to move on.org, you know, on my blog, what are we doing? But
on my blog. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's part of the fun for me, you know, and
well, it is. It captures a zeitgeist that certainly is no longer the zeitgeist.
Yeah. There is
like, I guess I'll say this about it, right? It's the one, again, we've discussed Karyn Kusama. We really like her as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
That's the movie, right? Like when you think about, you know, 50 years down the road, like, is this person going to be remembered? I don't know if there's any other film in her filmography that stands out quite as much as that one. So I think that's another reason why I like that one the best, is just because like that is the real swing for the fences. That is the one that should have been a household name. Like none of these others, you know, Destroyer and The Invitation and Girl Fight, like, you know, they're not going to be remembered. Aeon Flux might be remembered for just being the catastrophe that it was. But yeah, like Jennifer's Body should have been the thing that kind of solidified her as someone that people should know. And maybe someone that wouldn't be on a show like this, but here we are.
And it's the movie of hers that I would, if somebody knew we were doing this show and was like, which of the movies I've never seen any of these movies. Which
did she
should I
direct?
watch? And I would be like, you should watch Jennifer's Body. Like watch Jennifer's Body. That's the movie I would say, like, you're going to enjoy the most. And you'll be like, wow, I can't believe this person I've never heard of made this movie. Right. And if you want to see something a little more serious, that's really good. Watch The Invitation. You know, I would have more qualifiers, right? Just like, it's going to be really serious. It's going to be really intense. It's going to really focus on the characters. Or Girl Fight, be like, listen, it's got some rough around the edges stuff because it's a first movie and you got a lot of first time actors in it and it's a first time director, but really good. But you got to be in for like the indie, character drama.
It's the least heightened of all her movies.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But the one that is moderately believable in the real world.
Yes, absolutely. But, again, leaving Aeon Flux out of it, right? She does a really good job with her lead actors pretty much across the board, right?
Yeah.
Michelle Rodriguez is great in Girl Fight. We talked about Megan Fox. Everybody's good in The Invitation, but Logan Marshall Green is fantastic in The Invitation as the center of that movie. Kidman's great in Destroyer. She's really good with these actors. And, for me, if you're a director making smaller movies, that's the most important thing for me as the kind of movie fan that I am. We talked about this before. A really great performance can overcome a lot for me in a movie that I might not otherwise really love. And so she's so good at that. She's so good at handling actors. And again, I hope she gets more bites of the apple going forward. I don't know what that would be. I mean, if it hasn't happened yet, is it going to happen? Probably not, but hope she gets to keep working in TV and keeps being a creative force in TV. Because that's another way back in, right? Is to be like, well, she made like these really successful TV shows. Maybe we should give her, a shot again. So
I mean, what happened with Catherine Bigelow? Like when Zero Dark, The Hurt Locker was before Zero Dark 30.
Yes.
But like that was the one that kind of took the world by storm, and she had been working pretty consistently, but like hadn't made anything of note in a very, very long time. Like came out really, really strong with Near Dark and made some interesting movies along the way, but really was not, that.
Well, I mean, honestly, before Hurt Locker, she wasn't working a lot because she was in movie jail, basically.
Well, she made, what was it? Strange Days, which was great. I love that movie.
That's so many years before.
And then the K-19, The Widowmaker. And then was there anything in between? I don't think there was.
No, that's what I mean. There was nothing between K-19, The Widowmaker.
But she had to direct some TV or something there, right?
She directed, I don't know what this is. Something called Mission Zero that Uma Thurman was in. I don't even know what it is.
That sounds great.
It was a short. So no.
Oh, so I guess what I'm saying is maybe there is a second act for Karyn Kusama. Like maybe there is that big Oscar winning movie. Like she is capable. Like I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? Like she could do something like The Hurt Locker.
She could absolutely is capable of it, right? Yeah, she makes just so Bigelow. K-19 The Widowmaker is in 2002. Hurt Locker's in 2008.
Okay, so
There's
8 years
where she does
between.
nothing.
Yeah. I'm sorry, 6 years in between.
Yeah. The thing I will say, the difference between Bigelow, the only difference between Bigelow and Kusama is that Bigelow on her resume has a gigundous hit before.
Couple of them, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of them before we get to her director jail time. So who knows, right? It's obviously it's possible, right? But I think they're very different people, very different personalities.
Yeah, they're
right?
making different movies.
Different kinds of movies, right? So who knows? But,
Catherine Bigelow would have directed the shit out of that robbery scene in Destroyer.
Yeah. Catherine Bigelow's Destroyer is a whole different movie.
I don't know if it's a better movie, but that scene would have been better.
First of all, it costs $60 million for bare minimum because Catherine Bigelow is not going in there and being like, I'll make this for $8 million. Like that's not happening. Not anymore. She's making it for a lot of money and it's going to have a huge cast. And yeah, it would be like that scene would be so loud and so kinetic. It would be, I mean, she's a great director. She is.
Fantastic director. She's very good at that stuff.
Yeah. She's incredible at that stuff. Crazy, really, just speaking about her really quick, because we're never going to talk about her on the show probably because she's obviously like, big deal, big time, big deal.
She escapes the confines of this show.
Yeah, she escapes the confines of this show.
That's too bad because she'd be interesting to talk about.
And maybe someday we will, but
maybe everything up to The Hurt Locker.
I mean, that includes one of the biggest movies of the 90s. So I don't know if that would.
Oh, yeah, but we're going to cover big movies on this show.
We
right?
will.
We
I would just say like
fucking Top Gun Maverick.
We did. I would say like I would say if we're going to do her, we would do it all, because there's some stuff after that gets like, but
Battle in Seattle. Was that her?
No, that wasn't her. No. She did Detroit. That was the movie
Detroit
that you're thinking of.
Same thing.
That's sort of
city,
like that.
City in the title. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort
Detroit
of like
is
that.
absolutely the one I was thinking of.
But crazy that after the Hurt Locker, obviously Zero Dark 30 was a success, but she never really had the same sort of level of praise after Hurt Locker that I kind of expected. Like, I thought Zero Dark 30 was going to be, and I think everyone did, right? That it was going to be like, it was going to win every award that year, right?
Yeah.
That it was coming out, and it just.
I still actually haven't seen that one.
Really? I saw it for the first time a couple years ago, actually. I hadn't seen it yet, and it was good. And I love movies like that are like, it's a very process oriented, like we're going to we were mixing in like, on the ground, like CIA shit with like people in offices, like doing a lot of computer work and looking at maps, so I'm all for that stuff, but great performance, obviously too. Like, Chastain is amazing in it, but anyway, we're not talking about Catherine Bigelow, but Karyn Kusama, I give a big thumbs up for her and her skills and her abilities as a director, and really enjoyed watching all of these movies that she made.
I did too.
Next week, we're going to talk about the bonus, but I think since it's just a bonus, I think we should probably announce who our next topic of discussion is for their full filmography. And Nick, I'm going to let you announce it since you're the one who chose this filmmaker.
Okay. I mean, I had a very specific reason for choosing him, but I think he's an interesting filmmaker to talk about. And he has made, I haven't seen everything that he's done, but he's made a film that I consider a very like all-timer for me. We're going to be talking about Mallrats co-star Ben Affleck, who had a later career as a filmmaker, as well as a Kevin Smith supporting player.
Yes. We're talking about his directorial efforts.
Yeah. So, we're going to start with Gone Baby Gone. That's the one that I think is a just phenomenal movie. And the reason why I like totally selfish, superficial reasons, I'm reading Live by Night right now. I think that book is incredible. And I've always wanted to see the movie because it was notoriously another flop. And supposedly he took this subject matter that I think is very good and somehow messed it up. So I want to find out how.
Yeah. So we're going to do Gone Baby Gone, The Town, Argo, Live by Night, and Air, right? Those are the 5.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more. So it's another 5 hitter, and then we'll go on something a little more extensive. Yeah,
with the plan to do possibly a couple bonuses for his writing efforts with Mr. Damon. So that would be a Good Will Hunting episode and a Last Duel episode. So we'll see how we're feeling about Mr. Affleck when we wrap up Air and how we're feeling about that. And then the plan for that is to do another.
Well, I'll always watch Good Will Hunting, so I'm up for it. Yeah.
And after that, we'll do another filmmaker who has a little bit longer filmography, but not super long. And then we're going to do our first like really big filmography after that. I think you're going to be excited. I think we got some, after Affleck, we got some really. I'm excited about the Affleck thing. It was your idea.
Oh, I'm really excited about the Affleck thing. Thank you for being cool with that.
I love talking about Ben Affleck. You should be prepared. I'm going to talk about movie star Ben Affleck a lot during this whole period because I think it's a fascinating guy, fascinating career. Really one of my favorite words for the show, fascinating people to talk about in all of the entertainment industry, bar none.
He was the bomb in Phantoms.
Yo, for sure. Applesauce.
I'll try to stop talking about Kevin Smith, but that like Kevin Smith lives within me somehow. Like I can't distance myself. I'm trying to. I hated Clerks 3 so much, but like there is a little part of me that's always going to be, 14 years old watching Clerks and just thinking that this guy was like my guy. So anyone that was associated with that, I can't help it.
Most men of our age had their Kevin Smith time for sure.
Yeah, but most of them have like been able to just cut themselves off from it completely.
Which I have. I definitely have.
Yeah, and I mostly have, but I hold a little, like I said, there's a little part of my soul is askew, and it's all your fault, Kevin Smith. I still haven't seen what's the one Yoga Hosers. I haven't.
The only one you haven't seen?
I think it's the only one I haven't seen. You got to draw the line somewhere. Oh, and I've never seen Tusk, but I've heard good things about Tusk.
Okay, so okay. I was gonna say because the last one I watched was Red State.
Kind of like Red State.
Red State's fine. It's like it feels like a first movie.
It does, which is crazy because he had been working for so long before he made Red State. Look at this, guys. I made a movie.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you made a movie where the camera moves a little bit and has some interesting framing. You know?
And then talked about it like it was his, he became Fellini all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
Kevin
some good
Smith.
performances in that movie, for sure. But I think that's the last one I watched because that was that's post Clerks 2.
I think it's after Clerks 2, but before those ones I was just talking about.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen any of the like based on a podcast movies that he did, even though I was listening to Smodcast at the time. And when he like came up with the idea for Tusk, like on the podcast, just as like a riff, with Scott Mosier, I was listening to it. So it's like that. Yeah. It's like Tusk, Yoga Hosers, Clerks 3. Was there anything else?
Yeah, he made a terrible segment in an anthology movie.
Okay.
Just the grossest thing ever, starring his daughter.
Right. I heard about this.
That's when I really started to dislike him. That's when I really wanted to just distance myself. Like that's when the friend that I had always defended became kind of indefensible. But
he's just one of those guys. He's just
still, I'm gonna,
just like too, his strength when he originally was, becoming big, which was that he was so open and out there because it was so weird at the time for a working filmmaker to do that, it really kind of turned in on itself when he became all of that, when he was just all podcasts and him.
Yeah. Richard Linklater didn't end up doing that.
Well, no, very different filmmakers. Oh, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot was the other thing that he did
I saw that.
I haven't seen any of those things. And then he has the 4:30 movie that came out this year,
which I almost went to see. Yeah. And I totally will.
I mean, you're not a true fan until you've seen Tusk and Yoga Hosers.
It's true.
You got to see that recurring Johnny Depp detective character.
Oh, what's his name? Guy Laplante or something like that. Some very French sounding Canadian thing. Oh man.
I'm sure that performance is very measured, very subtle.
Yeah. Not insulting to French speaking Canadians at all.
I'm sure there's no weird affectations or hats or scarves or anything going on with that performance. From a really, I hope you're going to cut all
of it. We started this conversation about Karyn Kusama's Destroyer, and look where we ended up.
Oh, I'm going to cut this out and make it a social clip.
Good. Maybe Kevin Smith can be on the show.
I mean, I would listen. I would love to have him on the show.
You've met him, right? Everybody's met him.
I've met him. I've met him multiple times. I met him at Hartford University when Brian brought him there for an evening with Kevin Smith night.
Oh man, I was there.
I'm sure you were there. I got to go backstage and
my
meet him. My
fraternity nickname was Silent Bob. I wore my jersey backwards, and he's like, "That's cutting off the circulation." I was like, "Yeah, it kind of is."
Going backstage, I met him, got to shake hands with him and stuff like that, and whatever. And then
he signed my Clerks X DVD black on black because I had a black pen and the DVD is black. I don't know. It's Kevin Smith humor for you.
There was a time I waited online to ask him a question, and he. At the time, there was this big rumor that he was going to direct or be involved in like a live action Star Wars TV show. So I waited for like a really long time to get up there and ask that question. I asked him and he was like, no. That was it. But I always remember that night because that was the night where that one kid got up and he was like, Batman versus Superman. I prefer the Punisher.
That's so cool that you were there. I don't think I officially met you for like another 10, 12 years after that.
I was there. Batman versus Superman. I prefer the
Punisher. Whatever happened to that guy?
I don't know, but Brian and I were quoting that for like 20 years.
That's very cool. I did not know you were there that night. I'll never forget it. I guess you won't either.
Yeah, and then we went for like Brian and I went down for his like 37th birthday or whatever. He did like a big like evening with Kevin Smith thing down in like home area or whatever in Red Hook or whatever it was, whatever the hell, not Red Hook,
Red Bank. Yeah.
Red Bank.
I've never been down there. I'd love to see where it all
did the whole
began.
pilgrimage. We went to the Quick Stop. We went to the boardwalk where they played skee ball and Chasing Amy. We did the whole tour.
But I'm the obsessive Kevin Smith fan.
That time I was a super obsessive Kevin Smith fan. You don't even like the guy. I was a huge, that was like 14 years ago now. So I was like really into it then, I was still in my like early, in my 20s. So I was like really into it. And then it was right around then, that was right after there where I really started to like move off of him in a lot of ways. Anyway, let's wrap this show up. If you guys want to hear more from us, head over to the intrepidfilmographers.com where you can see, our podcast gets published there. There's an easy place where you can find all the subscription links to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube podcasts, all the places you might want to use. You might want to subscribe to the show. Please rate and review us there if you haven't yet. Your YouTube channel is also there. We'll put videos up there. There's a couple of videos of us up there. I'm sure there's plenty more by now. This is coming out weeks from now, but we're trying to do some pretty regular content. I'm streaming a little bit as well. Twitch.tv/MrsAdventureland is what I stream under. I play some movie games, like some of like the Cine to Nerd movie grid and stuff like that, kind of on stream with the chat. And then also sometimes play some movie related games. So come check me out doing that. Check out all our social media because we've got a friend of the show, Brian Verderosa, up there helping doing some fun box office games with us. And Brian many times mentioned Brian may be on the Gone Baby Gone episode. He has said he wants to be, but we'll believe it if it happens. So if he's not on that show, then
we'll get him on the Affleck train somehow.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But until then, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you to everybody who's listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.